Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Game of Thrones. I'm flying a dragon on your face, how do you respond? Chapter 21. Your Highness, if Lord Tywin really rebelled, there is no reason not to arrange for his eldest son, Sir Jaime, to escape in advance. You must know that Sir Jaime is under strict surveillance under His Majesty's order. Jaehaerys couldn't figure it out. The original plot had only mentioned the death of Aerys II and the fall of King's Landing. With Tywin's shrewdness, he couldn't have been unaware that as long as he dared to rebel, Jaime would be sacrificed. So what did Tywin rely on? What else did he have? Was it Grand Maester Pycelle or someone else? I couldn't figure it out, I really couldn't figure it out. Jaehaerys shook his head and put the idea behind him. Is the truth important? Sometimes it is important, but more often it is not important. The ruler only needs to give the people of the world a seemingly reasonable answer. In their eyes, the common people are a signboard, a number, taxes, cattle and horses, but not people. Besides, Jaehaerys is not here to find the truth. For him, the most important thing is to ensure his own safety. As for changing the plot and opening a harem, please, I am a good cultivator. A cultivator should let nature take its course. After all, every world has its underlying logic. The general trend is determined by heaven and cannot be reversed. Once it is reversed, it will cause chaos in the operation of heaven. If it attracts the attention of heaven, natural disasters and man-made disasters will come from time to time. Does he still want to survive? The general trend of the world is like the river flowing downstream. Human power cannot go against it, but the general trend is divided into various small trends, such as the small ring on the anchor chain of a 10,000-ton ship. It is feasible to change the direction of the small trend occasionally without regard to the general trend. According to folklore on Blue Star, King Wen invited Zhang Taigong, who asked King Wen to carry the chariot. King Wen walked a total of 873 steps. Therefore, Taigong said that he would protect the Zhou dynasty for 873 years. After King Wen learned about it, he wanted to continue to carry it a few steps, but it was too late. Zhang Zia assisted King Wu of Zhou in attacking Shang, which was a general trend, but it was not certain how many years it would last. This is what is called small trends can be changed, but big trends are difficult to violate. Let it go, and don't force it. Jaehaerys will not do things that are out of control, but only want to be the one who adds fuel to the fire and fan the flames. Cause and effect. What cause and effect? Interfering with the mundane affairs of the world and changing the fate of others is a serious cause and effect. Please, as I said before, I let it go. Bald donkeys avoid it like a tiger. What does it have to do with me, the Taoist priest? I can't explain it clearly at this moment, but I am sure that Lord Tywin is definitely not well-intentioned. Lord Roset, I hope that after the Lannister army enters the city, you and the wise men will do this and that. Jaehaerys whispered to the old warlock, and Roset nodded after listening. This is very good. After the two finalized the details, Jaehaerys left with satisfaction. He did not go back to the room directly, but found Queen Layla. Queen Layla was also a beauty when she was young, but because of the long-term tension and disharmony between her and the king, she looked much older than her actual age. In the previous life on Blue Star, there were many people who called themselves fairies at this age, but she looked like an old woman. Even on Blue Star, it is a hell for elderly mothers to give birth, not to mention in this era of extremely poor hygiene and childbirth conditions. The fact that she was able to give birth to Dragon Mother smoothly can only be attributed to her relatively healthy physical condition, the mercy and blessing of the gods, and the presence of an experienced midwife. Seeing Queen Layla in a listless state, Jaehaerys quietly sent out a stream of spiritual energy. Layla suddenly felt refreshed, and seeing her youngest son, she happily hugged him in her arms. It must be said that Queen Layla really loves her children. She has been trying her best to protect her children from their father's harm for so many years. Jaehaerys is not a real 7-year-old child after all. Feeling the softness on his head, his little face blushed, and he was blessed with infinite blessings. He has never been treated this way in 2 lifetimes. In his previous life, his mother was like his father, both of whom were introverted people, and they would not express their motherly love so directly. Jaehaerys struggled to escape from the land of tenderness, and Queen Layla was slightly disappointed. The child has grown up. Mother, I had a dream. Jaehaerys repeated his previous words. What's more, with the practice at the old warlock's place, his acting skills have been greatly improved, and Queen Layla almost believed it. Why do I say almost? No one knows a child better than his mother. Every time the original owner lied, his eyes would unconsciously drift outward, and his fingers would involuntarily twist his hair, which gradually became a physical instinct. Although Jaehaerys had traveled through time, these subtle little habits were still retained. Others may not know, but Layla saw it at a glance. Little Gia, don't play tricks with me. Tell me what you want to do. Queen Layla exposed his little tricks and spoke bluntly. Ah, how can I act? Jaehaerys quickly realized the problem and couldn't help but have a headache. He couldn't say that he was a soul traveled through time. Although the skin is still the same skin, the core has changed, right? Well, mother, I am actually a little scared. Jaehaerys suddenly had an idea and slipped into the gentle land again. With his slightly trembling voice and small body, his credibility increased immediately. Queen Layla was actually at a loss. She couldn't understand why the good situation suddenly collapsed. Although she was in the Deep Palace, she also had her own sources of information. Now that the enemy was about to come to the city, how could she not worry about her children and grandchildren? Mother, why don't we go to Dragonstone? At least the rebels don't have warships, we will be safe there. Jaehaerys said in a huff. But the mobilization of warships requires your father's order. Layla hesitated. She and the king had too many differences and rifts. Some things happened that made her unwilling to face him unless she had to. Maybe warships are not needed for escort. There are countless merchant ships anchored at King's Landing port, from Crab Island, from Tide Island, and even across the narrow sea. As long as we bring more guards. I'll think about it again. Now is an extraordinary period. Safety is the most important thing. Queen Layla was a little moved. She decided to meet the king in the evening. For the sake of the child, she could endure it. Jaehaerys was a little surprised. He felt that he had taken advantage of this kind mother's love for her son. Although he knew that in the original plot, Queen Rhaella and Viserys finally sailed to Dragonstone before the fall of King's Landing, after absorbing all the memories of the original owner, he knew that the original owner's last wish before his death was to hope that their family could live a better life without so many hardships. Since Jaehaerys inherited this body, it was only natural for him to fulfill the original owner's last wish. Moreover, as someone who had watched the TV series A Song of Ice and Fire, who could turn a blind eye to the plight of Dragon Mother and other Targaryen women and children. Moreover, although Jaehaerys's abilities were limited now, he could use his understanding of the general direction of the plot to protect them for a lifetime without any worries. Queen Layla has a strong execution ability and met the king that night. Perhaps this is the difference between her and her husband. King Aerys always talks a lot but does very little, so that he has made almost no achievements in more than 10 years. How they communicated with each other is unknown to outsiders. Just one day later, when a large group of Lannister infantry appeared on the outskirts of King's Landing, the king finally arranged for the royal fleet anchored at the dock to escort Queen Layla and the twins to Dragonstone. Where are my sister-in-law and nieces and nephews? Jaehaerys, who arrived at the dock late at night, did not see Princess Elia Martell and her children, so he couldn't help but ask about Queen Layla. Your father refused to let them leave, saying that little Aegon, as the heir to the kingdom, should be close to the country. Your sister-in-law was kept in the Red Keep, to prevent Dorne from being unwilling to send troops again, and little Rhaenys. Queen Layla's eyes turned red. She has been crying in the past few days saying that her father came to pick her up. She doesn't want to leave Rhaegar's room. Jaehaerys felt anxious and uncomfortable. Rhaenys was only 4 years old, a very cute little girl. In the memory of the original owner, this little niece was very close to the twins. Although they were separated by a generation, they were only 3 years apart in age. The little girl followed the twins all day long, acting as their little follower, and behind her was always a black kitten, the cat named Balerion. In the original plot, when Maegor's tower was captured, Tywin killed all members of the Targaryen family in order to show his loyalty and sincerity. Rhaenys was dragged out from under Rhaegar's bed by the pig-headed Sergeant Amory Lodge. The small body had been stabbed dozens of times. Little Aegon was thrown against the wall by the mountain and died after his head was broken. Princess Elia was raped to death by the mountain with brains on her hands. Queen Layla was pregnant, So even though she didn't show her pregnancy, she felt tired after dealing with affairs for a while and went back to her room to rest. This is not what I wanted, Jaehaerys muttered. Hi, Xiaoji, I've been working very hard to learn swordsmanship from Sir William recently. Did you enjoy beating me last time? Today I want to return the shame to you intact. Draw your sword, brother. Viserys took out a practice sword from his waist. It was made of wood on the outside, with an iron bar or lead bar or other metal hollowed out in the middle as a counterweight. It is a common practice wooden sword for page boys and children. When you get older, you can try to use an unedged blunt sword. Jaehaerys felt irritated. How could he want to play with him? So without looking back, he drew his sword, sheathed it, and directly gave Viserys a set of his residences. He turned around and walked away in one go, leaving Viserys standing there, holding the broken sword in his hand. Wow, Viserys looked at the wooden sword with a smooth cross-section, and even the iron bars inside were cut off. He was shocked and cried, looking for William Derry, the trainer of the Red Keep. He had been following him recently. The latter learned swordsmanship, and even Sir believed that he had considerable swordsmanship talent. Jaehaerys wanted to find Queen Layla, but wondered how she would agree. Even the queen must obey the king's order. Since it doesn't work head-on, we have to kill it first and then report it. He ordered people to summon Count Lucius Velaryon, and soon the count came to the Conqueror in a small boat. This was the largest warship in the fleet, with 300 oars. In the Blackwater River, we are still moving very steadily. Lord Lucius, are you His Highness Jaehaerys? Lucius Velaryon recognized him and bowed to salute. At the king's night banquet not long ago, Prince Jaehaerys left a deep impression on several important ministers. He has a sharp mind, speaks in an organized manner, and has no stage fright in front of the important officials of the court. This is for the son of any lord. Is not an easy thing, especially for the second son. The lords and nobles of this world generally love their eldest sons. They regard their eldest sons as their heirs and teach them from childhood. They will follow their father to handle government affairs when they are very young. However, the second son does not have this fate. The second son of most families will be educated from an early age to become a knight, to defend their family and the patriarch of the family. They are instilled in them the honor and responsibility of knights, and that family is above all else, but no one has ever told them how to adapt. They can rely on their own awareness. Some lords, families have too many boys, which will force some clever second sons to leave home to gain fame. In the north, many second sons and illegitimate sons will join the Knights' Watch out of honor, while in the south they will join the church and the school city. This is not a family. You can't afford to support them, but all the family's resources belong to the Lord. I wonder what your highness's orders are. Lord Lucius asked politely. My lord, I need a ship and enough sailors to sail her. Jaehaerys said, I want them to obey my orders completely and respond at any time. Who to respond to? Lucius asked. Jaehaerys glanced at him and said, of course it's to support the royal family. After saying that, he slid down the rope to the boat where the Sea Lord came from. Tell my mother that I will take my sister-in-law and the others to Dragonstone Island to join her in a few days. Your Highness, don't leave. Lucius looked at the prince who moved like a monkey. While praising his agility, he also shouted loudly. I haven't made any arrangements yet. What will you do if you can't find them then? When the time comes, let them fly the seahorse flag of the Velaryon family. We will rely on the slogan, blood and fire come from the same source, and the path is simple. Blood and fire come from the same source, the road is simple, the brave will know the right, and the wise will be benevolent. Boy, are you ready to go back and be a hero? Is it necessary to save you after taking the Dingben immortal route? A divine message entered Jaehaerys' mind, and it turned out to be the multi-talent spiritual route. Didn't we say we respect each other's privacy? We signed a contract. Respecting mutual privacy doesn't mean you can put us in danger together. Still in danger. Now that I have established a foundation, I have the consciousness to detect dangers, and I understand the plot of this world better. How can there be danger? Jaehaerys said disdainfully, if he didn't have 2 kings and 4 twos, how could he? Will you risk yourself? Duobao Lingen slapped his forehead. How did this kid get Niu Xian syndrome after building the foundation? Does he really think that building a foundation will mean he is invincible? Baby, This world is not as simple as you think. Let's not talk about it because it is too old. In the few years I have been sleeping, I have felt the divine thoughts of the immortal level many times. Celestial immortal. What level is that? You should know by now that the realm of cultivation is divided into chi training and foundation building, right? Hold head high. Foundation building is what you call refining chi and transforming into God when you practice Taoism. Of course, it doesn't matter what the name of this realm is. The important thing is that there is far more than just the realm of foundation building. In the immortal world, there are also human immortals, ghost immortals, earth immortals, heavenly immortals, true immortals, golden immortals, etc. This world is a small world, one of those small worlds where the aura has not dissipated. There are countless such worlds in the entire universe. Of course, this is not the point. The point is that you are just a little one building a foundation now. Although the immortal was not worthy of carrying my shoes before, it does not prevent others from being above you and me in this world. The immortal boss can drown you little ant even if he sneezes. Understood. But in the original plot, the immortal boss you mentioned didn't appear at all. Plot. Don't rely too much on the plot, okay. Although I don't know what the original plot is like, I know that the immortal boss can do whatever he wants in this world. Although they don't show up, I guess it's basically because of the G-Dharma era. But that doesn't mean they can't take action, it just depends on whether it's worth it, Duobao Lingon silently added in his heart. It's not convenient for them to take action. They can just arrange a bad guy in the fairyland to deal with you. Human immortal. What exactly is a human immortal? Human immortal represents the ultimate perfection of human beings. After building the foundation, 3 flowers must be condensed and returned to the original 5 chi. This is the so-called 3 flowers gathered at the top and 5 chi toward the yuan. To achieve this step means that human immortal has become. If the human immortal has not been condensed into a young god, then when the lifespan is reached, it can only be dissolved into corpses. It is called a ghost immortal, also called a corpse immortal. After becoming the young god and experiencing 3 disasters and 5 tribulations, one can be called an earth immortal. Only after an earth immortal survives the heavenly thunder tribulation can one be called a heavenly immortal. If you take one wrong step, all your previous efforts will be wasted and you will have to reincarnate and rebuild. Quote. Is it too late for me to go back to the ship now? Ahem, that would be too embarrassing. If you can afford it, I can't afford it. Don't worry too much. I have discovered before that most of the spiritual energy in this world seems to have been sealed, so the practitioners walking in the world now are not too high. Quote. How high? As high as 3 or 4 stories. Bah, what a mess. As long as you are not a heavenly immortal, you can reach the next level. The human immortal in the past is at best equivalent to the current foundation establishment. Aren't the earth immortals equivalent to human immortals? Will they be sent to mess with me? Why do you have such an idea? Are there many earthly immortals? They are also considered important figures in this world, so how could they become the doglegs of the heavenly immortals? To them, you are nothing. Hey, come on, since the earth immortal can't come out, why don't I just walk sideways and just hope for defeat? Do you think you are a fake or a fool? You are building a foundation, but your combat power is the same. People have more experience than you and their magic weapons are better than you, so how can you win? Do you have experience? Do you have a magic weapon? You don't even have a hair on your head. You're still walking sideways just for the sake of defeat. Just wait and ask for help. Lord Immortal Jen, I don't agree with your words, yes. I have nothing, I have no magic weapon and no experience, but I have my way. Jaharis looked serious. If the strong can humiliate the weak arbitrarily, and if justice in the world can only give way to tyranny, then what is the difference between humans and animals? Heaven and earth are unkind, and regard all things as stupid dogs. Since you believe in tyranny, then in the face of the great road of heaven and earth, you are the same. What's the difference between a dog and a mustard? If in the fairy world or many worlds, practitioners have always used the strong to bully the weak, then they have embarked on a crooked path, that is, using evil to suppress the good. In this way, the Dharma of peace is the best gift that the Great Road can give to all living beings. This is the true equality of all living beings. Quote. Duobao Immortal Jen is speechless. Someone said this many epochs ago, but in the end, isn't it still a matter of death? It lost interest for a moment and threw out a yellow Dao fruit. Just treat it as the rent for the second half of the year and pay it in advance. Be careful, don't die. Jaehaerys's heart moved. Cyan and yellow seemed to have different levels. Ignoring the surprised look in the sailor's eyes, he stuffed the yellow Dao fruit into his mouth and swallowed it in several mouthfuls. An abundant spiritual energy emanated from the fruit, forcing him to meditate quickly to absorb this abundant spiritual energy. A moment later, he saw a clear image in the fog. He was delighted and quickly absorbed it. With a flash in his eyes, Jaehaerys recalled the skills he had just learned. Murex breeding and glandular fluid extraction technology. Jaehaerys thought he would develop some powerful skills, or even supernatural powers. Result: I even took off my pants, is that all? It's not that this skill is useless, but it has no effect on him at this time. Well, this kid's luck, well, it's not very good. Let me think about it. This seems to be the secret skill of the Shark Saint girl more than 3,000 years ago. Duobao Lingen was also muttering in his heart. For thousands of years, countless people have ascended to the immortal world, and many of them have become immortals through merit. The saintess of the shark race is one of the countless representative figures who have become immortals through merit. She used this technology to benefit hundreds of millions of people, and in the end, God sent her merits. The Duobao spiritual root contains a lot of knowledge that immortals had before they became immortals. For the immortals, it was a pity to leave it behind and keep it without using it, so they gave it all to the Duobao spiritual root, eventually making it the book of the immortal world. Administrator, but he doesn't know which book his Dao fruit will include, but the experience accumulated over thousands of years tells it that darker colors will definitely have better effects than lighter ones. Just like the yellow Dao fruit that bears once every 10 years, the green Dao fruit that bears once a year. Of course, the number of fruits can reach tens of thousands. It's not that there are no higher level Dao fruits, it's mainly because Jaehaerys's cultivation level is too low. He's just a little Kalami in the foundation building stage, and it's useless to give him a chance. It's not that I'm reluctant to give it. The Duobao spiritual root closed the spiritual consciousness to explore, and went into seclusion directly. That's it, love whoever you want. Brother, can you give me another one? Master. The one-way call ended again, and Jaehaerys wanted to smash the phone. Don't have a mobile phone. Forget it. However, it should not be mentioned that the spiritual energy in the yellow Dao fruit is a bit higher than that of the green Dao fruit. If the perfection of foundation building is to cultivate the 3 flowers on the top and the 5 qi in the chest, then the energy provided by this Dao fruit is equivalent a petal on the 3 flowers. It looks like a lot, right? But the key point is that this flower is a 1,000-petal golden lotus. So, cultivation still depends on oneself. Dao is a thief, who is the object of the theft. That is the way of heaven and the great way. Relying on external objects is purely like using a sieve to catch water. I don't know why I was so excited when I read those cultivation novels about people who were instantly defeated by heaven and earth after getting natural treasures. Now that Jaehaerys has embarked on the path of cultivation, he knows why some alchemists and Taoists cannot become Dao. The main reason is that they took the wrong path. With the sound of oars and water, Jaehaerys's boat quickly returned to the dock. Since the guards had boarded the boat with Her Majesty the Queen, he was alone at the moment. He has no other strengths, only a sword. The full name of the mud gate is Lin Gate. It is on the north bank of the Blackwater River. There is a fish market outside. There is a fisherman's square through the gate. From the mud gate back to the Red Castle, you have to pass through the mud road and Hook Lane. I dare not say that there are dragons and tigers along the way, but it is also full of dangers. Imagine, the youngest son of a rich man, carrying a school bag, eating hot pot and singing, alone without a bodyguard, wants to return to his family's 10-acre luxury estate, but he needs to go through a long slum, there are no street lights and no surveillance on the road. In the eyes of robbers, what is that called? Not robbing him is an insult to his personality and intelligence. Don't say how good the security in King's Landing is, it's not much better than the slums of Blue Star in the future. Jaehaerys looked at the rowers. Strictly speaking, they were not soldiers of the royal fleet, their status was similar to that of servants and farmhands. Let them row the boat, don't ask for anything else, after all, you should do your part for the price, unless you have to pay more. Relying on the name of Prince Jaehaerys, the drawbridge on the top of the city was lowered, the iron gate was opened, and Jaehaerys requisitioned a stallion from the golden cloaks guarding the city, and then headed towards the Red Castle under the escort of several rowers. As for why the soldiers guarding the city were not requisitioned, Jaehaerys said that if a few unarmed rowers rebelled, he would have a good chance of escaping with his sharp sword and fast horse, but in front of fully armed soldiers, that would be worrying. Fortunately, these rowers were stabilized by 1 gold dragon each, and for them, 1 gold dragon was enough for their families to survive this difficult period. Even if they didn't have a family, it didn't matter. 1 gold dragon was now enough for them to go to the seafood merchant's restaurant and have a good time. Think about it, there are beauties from all over the world there, and changing one a day can also play with seafood merchants from the 7 kingdoms, Lee, and the Summer Islands. Jaehaerys rode in the middle, scanning the surroundings with his spiritual sense. As it was late at night, there were not many good people walking on the streets except pickpockets and thieves. The golden robes also stood on the city wall because of the tense situation. They were really helpless in the shadows. Some people hid in the shadows and peeked, and some looked out from the half-covered door frame, but they were wise not to intercept this large team. Although the weakest in this team was the most capable, people were accustomed to judging the strength of the force by the strength or weakness of the body, so the several muscular rowers in Jaehaerys' team dispelled the terrible thoughts of the people in the shadows. After successfully arriving at the Red Castle, Jaehaerys decisively paid the rowers' fees, 1 gold dragon per person. This money made them excited and knelt down to praise the prince's kindness. Although the guards of the Red Castle were curious about why Prince Jaehaerys had returned, they still welcomed him into the city. Some even joked that he couldn't let go of the beauties in the prince's residence. It was precisely because they were familiar with him that the guards treated him differently from other royal family members. To them, Jaehaerys was a prince who could pee and make dirty jokes together, just like the legendary, promiscuous prince, Demon. God knows why such a young child is more skilled than them in talking about jokes. If it weren't for this rebellion, perhaps when Prince Jaehaerys grew up, he would be in charge of the capital garrison like Prince Demon. Jaehaerys was not annoyed by the teasing, which was also his purpose. The Celestial Empire has its own national conditions. It is easier to do things when you are familiar with people, although it is also due to his own personality. Sir Bronn, you must take good care of your mare, the big horse under my crotch is very hot. Old Heart, you actually drank secretly, well, I caught you. Sir Thorn, I heard that your wife gave birth to a big fat boy for you. Congratulations, I will definitely give you a big gift on the next naming day. Hey, dear Jaime, please throw away that rusty breastplate, okay? I will give you a beautiful embossed breastplate next time we meet. Along the way, Jaehaerys talked with the guards on duty, and soon arrived at Maegor's tower without any obstacles. The White Knight on duty today was Jaime Lannister. In fact, he was the one last night, the night before, and many nights before. Jaime said he was helpless. He was on night duty every day and was sleepy as a dead dog during the day. But there is no way. Among the 7 Kingsguards, Sir Jon Darry and Sir Lewin Martell have died in the battle, and Barristan Selmy the Fearless was seriously injured and captured. Now the Red Keep still does not know whether he is alive or dead. The captain of the Kingsguard, Gerald Hightower the White Bull, Arthur Dayne the Sword of the Dawn, and Esser Oswell River are missing. Some people say that they followed Rhaegar, but they did not appear in the Battle of the Trident or the army that besieged Storm's End. Now he is the only White Guard left in King's Landing, so there is no one to take the shift. Your Highness Jaehaerys. Jaime bowed and saluted. Judging from his appearance, Jaime is still very young, only 17 years old, and has been a Kingsguard for more than a year. Sir Jaime, I heard that you are also the younger brother of the twins. Jaehaerys took the opportunity to talk to Jaime. This famous Kingslayer, in later generations did not have the arrogance of looking down on the heroes of the world as nothing in the TV series, nor did he have the madness and cruelty of throwing Bran Stark off the tower. He was wearing white glazed armor decorated with golden lions, and the white cloak behind him was buckled on both sides of his shoulders with buckles in the shape of golden lion heads. In fact, Jaehaerys never understood in his 2 lifetimes why people in this world like to wear cloaks and capes so much. They are obviously very heavy. Don't they affect their movements during war? However, Jaehaerys was smart not to ask questions, just treat it as a tradition and custom. Anyway, He also has a black and red velvet cloak with a three-headed dragon pattern on him, but when it comes to fighting, he can take it off immediately by pulling the buttons on his body. Reply to your highness, it is true. Jaime's expression was a little subtle. They are also twins, but the relationship between him and his sister, ahem, if you tell it out, you will have to go to the orthopedics department. I heard that your sister is much prettier than Lyanna Stark. Of course, Lyanna is as beautiful as a firefly compared to my sister. Jaime did his best to praise his sister, and there were some dark thoughts in his heart that were unknown to others, just like a child who had eaten honey and pretended to be reserved, watching others get angry about it and laughing in his heart. Oh, so that's it. It seems that it was a big mistake for my brother not to choose your sister. Jaehaerys said lightly. Quote. Jaime was speechless for a moment. He knew clearly that his sister deeply admired Prince Rhaegar. If King Aerys had agreed to their marriage, his sister would definitely not be with him. In the final analysis, he still lost. Sir Jaime, I heard that your father also came to the outside of King's Landing today. Jaehaerys suddenly asked. Ah, really? I've been sleeping all day and I don't know much about this. Jaime was still immersed in frustration a second ago. When he was suddenly asked about his father, he recalled his father's letter and his eyes revealed a trace of panic. Jaehaerys nodded secretly in his heart. It seems that Jaime knew that his father was going to rebel. Just now, he just used a little rhetoric and a little spiritual sense to slightly interfere with the latter's thinking, and he was a little panicked, which means that Jaime and Tywin should have been connected through some channel. This is not surprising at all. After all, spies from all sides have already infiltrated King's Landing into a big sieve, full of holes. Considering Tywin's behavior and the financial strength of the Lannister family, it would be strange if Jaime didn't know about it. Your father is the savior of King's Landing, Jaehaerys said with a hint of ridicule. It reminded Jaime of the Mad King's mockery. He was indeed the Mad King's offspring. Your Highness, you will know whether you are the savior of King's Landing when the time comes. Jaime straightened his back and thought to himself that when I force you to kneel in front of my father, I hope you can still speak rudely. Sir Jaime, I have also learned swordsmanship from Sir William recently. I wonder if I will have the opportunity to ask the Kingsguard for advice tomorrow. Jaehaerys patted the long sword on his back. He was still too short, only a little over 4 feet, which was considered tall among children of the same age, but the meteor sword, including the handle and sheath, was 3.5 feet long. The handle would poke his chin when hung on his waist, so for the convenience of carrying, Jaehaerys always carried it diagonally behind his back. It's an honor, my lord. Jaime looked contemptuous, thinking that he would make the Targaryen prince kneel down and beg for mercy from the son of the Lannister family tomorrow, which was also a very happy thing. As for what swordsmanship he learned, is it important? At best, it's just a blind gesture, but tomorrow I have to grasp the degree and not hurt the child's heart too much. Who made me a knight? Well, let him do 3 moves first. Orthopedics welcomes you, and moves you with a hammer, so that we all have the courage to transcend ourselves. Orthopedics welcomes you, and no one can afford to offend you if you have courage. If you have courage, you will have a sister knight. Jaehaerys hummed an inexplicable tune and left. He didn't look for Aerys too, because it wouldn't be of much use. He wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that at the night banquet a few days ago, the king asked for his opinion on the heir, and he thought he had the right to speak in front of the king. To put it bluntly, he is a second son, that's all. At night, Maegor's Holdfast seemed to be asleep. It was dark. Jaehaerys jumped up and took a torch from the ledge on the wall to illuminate. Fortunately, he was familiar with Maegor's Holdfast. It was the residence of the royal family. Before today, he had lived here for 7 years. His own room had been packed and shipped to Dragonstone by express delivery. As the crown prince, Rhaegar's room was the largest except for the king's, occupying almost the entire 2nd floor, so it was quite easy to find. Now all he had to do was go in, tell his sister-in-law about the stakes, and then take her and the children away quietly. Jaehaerys said to himself, complex things often have simple solutions, the way is simple, it's that simple. He knocked on the door, doo-doo-do. The dull sound spread in the empty corridor, like the breathing of shadows. Who? A young woman's voice came from the other side of the door. I tell you, if you dare to harass us again, I will castrate you. Oh, what a fierce woman, Jaehaerys whispered, Sister-in-law. It's me, open the door. This trick is not fun, you bunch of animals, aren't you afraid that His Majesty will burn you to death? Ahem, Olenna, it doesn't seem to be them this time. Go and have a look. Another weak voice sounded from inside, and if Jaehaerys hadn't been sharp-eyed and sharp-eared, he would definitely not have heard it. The woman named Olenna muttered something, but her accent was very heavy, and Jaehaerys didn't understand, but it was definitely not a good thing. The door opened a little, and a little head with slightly dark skin came out of the door. The obsidian-like eyes rolled around. Seeing Jaehaerys outside the door, she retracted her head like lightning, and the door was closed again. Your Highness, it's really Prince Jaehaerys. Olenna's voice revealed joy. Soon, the heavy door was opened again, and the little maid bowed and invited Jaehaerys into the room. Rhaegar's room was a huge suite, with several doors on the left and right, and a small hall in the middle. There was a long table that was not too big, and a row of chairs on both sides. The door on the left was slightly light, and the other doors were tightly closed. There were no decorations in the room, but judging from the different shades of the wall, there should have been something hanging on the wall, but it was taken down. Ahem, Your Highness, forgive me for being rude. A weak voice came from the door, a bit like a newborn kitten, thin and soft. With the light, a woman with long black hair and pale face was seen lying on the bed, with a few pillows behind her to prevent her from falling. Sister-in-law. Jaehaerys bowed and saluted. In the original owner's memory, he was not close to this sister-in-law from Dorne. They only saw that the age difference was too big. In this era of early marriage and early childbearing, the twins and their brother Rhaegar were 17 years apart, almost equivalent to a generation apart. Rhaegar also ignored his brothers. After he became a knight at the age of 17, people said that his martial arts were unparalleled in the world, but until he died at the age of 24, he had never taught his brothers a day of martial arts. He loved reading since he was a child, but he never taught his brothers a day of knowledge. The twins of the Targaryen family did not get any of the glory brought by him, but they were implicated because of their blood. People loved him more than the king. Barristan, the White Bull, the Sword of the Dawn and other famous people were all his friends and subordinates. It was simply a king bomb at the beginning, but he played a good hand of cards badly. Jaehaerys complained in his heart. Rhaegar had paid the price for his behavior, but his wife and children should not be implicated like this, just like the Targaryen family. Viserys in the original plot agreed with both hands and feet. The slaughter of women and children was just to vent their anger, to extinguish the Dragon King's bloodline, and to send him a petition. These so-called knights are just beasts in iron clothes. After taking up arms, they released the devil in their hearts, and then wrote the history of the victors, full of righteous lies. Sister-in-law, I believe you also know the current situation. I am going to take you to Dragonstone. A small boat is already waiting there. Jaehaerys said quickly. Elia and the girl named Olenna looked at each other as if they had heard a fantasy. But His Majesty will not let us leave, Elia said, her voice so low that Jaehaerys had to prick up his ears to catch a trace of sound waves. At this time, are the king's words still so important? Don't you think about it, if the city is destroyed, your life and the lives of your children will be in danger. Aegon is gone, Elia murmured to herself, tears slowly flowing from her big black and white eyes. Your Highness Jaehaerys, His Highness Aegon has been taken away by His Majesty the King. He sent Count Varys to replace him with a child with white hair, Olenna explained. Jaehaerys was a little confused. Didn't it say in the TV series that he was thrown to death? Why was he sent away? Is this TV series tricking me? He just suffered the loss of not having read the original novel, otherwise he would definitely know the plot. However, because the original novel has not been updated, there is doubt whether Aegon V, claimed by Varys, is indeed the son of Rhaegar. There was no DNA identification method in this era, so it was impossible to tell based on appearance alone. After all, there were many Valyrian descendants with silver hair and purple eyes in the continent of Essos. Does the octopus spider have any credentials? Jaehaerys asked quickly. He held in his hand the king's handwriting, with His Majesty's seal on it. Jaehaerys thought that due to the craftsmanship in this world, it was difficult to imitate the exact same seal, and the sealing wax was melted on the spot with a spoon and then poured on the spot. There was no such thing as a seal reserved in advance, and Varys dared to come up with it. The king's seal is not afraid of others checking it, so there should be no doubt about the authenticity of this matter. On the surface, the Targaryen twins were sent to Dragonstone to attract firepower, but secretly, the sky changed the day. No matter whether Robert killed or trapped, the true heir's safety could be guaranteed. High, really high. However, Jaehaerys said that he was not doubting Aerys II's IQ. Could it be that the so-called wise man will always make mistakes and the fool will always gain something? Besides, does Aerys trust the octopus spider that much? To the point of giving away the future of the kingdom? I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. If the person who fell to death from the magic mountain was not the true heir to the monarch of the Seven Kingdoms, can this child be saved? Jaehaerys thought, of course he was saved. If Aegon Targaryen was innocent, wouldn't the child who died as a substitute be even more innocent? Where's Rhaenys? Did she go with Varys too? Princess Rhaenys doesn't want to leave. She said she dreamed that Prince Rhaegar came to pick her up, and she doesn't want to come out of his room. Olenna spoke out and said the same thing as Queen Layla. Silly child, if you don't leave, there will be no chance to leave. Your father has died a long time ago. I wonder if anyone else told her this terrible news. Maybe I can take advantage of this. So Jaehaerys asked Princess Elia to allow him to persuade his little niece. Elia was obviously very worried, but she couldn't think of a suitable solution. So under the leadership of the little maid, he came to the door of Rhaegar's room. Little follower, come out quickly, I am your third uncle Jaehaerys. Woo-woo, no, I want to wait for daddy here. The little girl seemed to be not asleep, and said with a cry. Uncle is the one who took you to find your father. You lied. Dad said he would take me to the Midsummer Hall, where there are giant dragons flying above the blue sky and white clouds, shuttling between tall buildings and towers. Rhaenys, do you know your father's title? He is the Prince of Dragonstone. Why is he in Summer Hall? It must have been a nightmare. Now my uncle, your mother, and your brother are going to Dragonstone to find your father. Just tell me whether you want to go or not, Jaehaerys said in a relaxed and cheerful tone. Really? Rhaenys quickly got out of the room. It turned out that the door of this room was not bolted from the inside at all, not. Blessings are immeasurable, and I, a Taoist priest, also told a white lie in order to save an innocent name. It is considered as a benefit to the world, and I am kind and compassionate, and it does not violate the Tao. Well, really? Jaehaerys nodded. Olenna looked at Jaehaerys in surprise. Rhaenys, the little ancestor, had been in the room for 2 days, and no one could persuade her. If she was taken away by force, she would cry, fuss, and bite people. Several guards were bitten by her. I thought that Jaehaerys also failed, but who knew it could be that simple? Also, because no one else knew where they wanted to take her, how could Jaehaerys have such a clear goal, and Rhaenys had stayed with her parents on Dragonstone when she was a child. Although she was young, she had some impressions, so he immediately agreed with Jaehaerys' statement. Oh, I'm going to find my father. Rhaenys cheered, with tears still hanging on her face. Jaehaerys took her little hand and came to Princess Elia. Sister-in-law, you hurry up and pack up. We will set off as soon as possible without further ado. Elia shook her head, and Olenna explained, Your Highness, we have already taken care of it, but our Highness's body. After Elia gave birth to Aegon, her physical condition was extremely poor and she could only stay in bed for a while. The maesters had no other solution but to tell her not to overwork herself. Jaehaerys guessed that her body was weak to begin with, and her 2 childbirths had exhausted her energy. Looking at her face turned black. He passed a stream of spiritual energy through the air, but it was of no use. Boy, you don't have to waste your efforts. This woman has run out of gas and her time has come. Duo Bao Miaoshu's spiritual consciousness came through. Jaehaerys sighed in his heart. It seemed that the magic mountain was just the last straw for his sister-in-law. Even if the Lannister treated her with courtesy, she would eventually die. Elia was no longer good at what she did. Apart from Olenna, a personal maid, she originally had only one wet nurse and 2 old ladies. The wet nurse was taken away by Varys because she was too familiar with Prince Aegon. The 2 old ladies lived together in the servants' home. So it was difficult to find someone to carry Elia away, not to mention the king's order not to allow her to leave Maegor's tower. Olenna, my good sister. Ahem, take Rhaenys and that child and go. If I had known today, I would never have said goodbye to my little Aegon. Your Highness, what about you? Her Majesty the Queen ordered us to defend your safety to the death. If you don't leave, I can't leave either. The little maid cried. Her Majesty should be the current Queen of Dorne. Since the wise king, Daron II reached a peace and unification agreement with the Prince of Dorne in 187 AC, Dorne has maintained considerable privileges, such as retaining the prince or the queen's title is one of them. Accurately, it should be called prince or princess, but basically the translation is called prince, so the old way uses the translation. The other 6 countries did not have this treatment. They were all downgraded and became lords. It's the lord that human farmers often say, "Yes, my lord," when playing Warcraft. The so-called dukes, marquises, earls, and barons are also lords, but the strength between the lords is obviously unequal, so the titles in the translated version have been adjusted accordingly. Without further ado, the two of them chatted for a long time. Jaehaerys was waiting anxiously. Finally, the little maid Olenna reluctantly took out the bundle. Obviously, they had already planned to get away. After all, the exquisite tapestries on the wall were all gone. In the memory of the original owner, Jaehaerys, there was a huge tapestry of the history of Aegon's conquest war in Rhaegar's bedroom. It was a treasure that had been passed down in the royal family for hundreds of years and was priceless. But the place where it was originally hung was empty. However, just like the dozens of Valyrian steel weapons and millions of gold dragons thrown into the royal treasury, Jaehaerys did not have the ability to transport them all away, so he could only give them to Robert for nothing. Money is something outside of the body. Jaehaerys told himself, I am a cultivator, what is the use of having a little money? However, I still felt a little unwilling in my heart. If I had the magical power of the world in my sleeves at this time, I would guarantee that I would not leave a single copper coin for Robert. I heard that the treasure tree has a space. Forget it, I guess people really don't like this little wealth. Jaehaerys led the tearful Rhaenys and the little maid Olenna out of the room, while the child fell asleep in Olenna's arms. Elia watched them go away, and then thought of her son being separated from his family. Tears welled up in her eyes and she choked up, Pray to the Virgin Mary for mercy, and bless my son to grow up healthily. It is true. Separation of flesh and blood is infinite sorrow, the wind is sharp, the frost is sharp, and the moon is like a hook, a journey of 3,000 winds and rains, just because of the destruction of the country and the family feud. As soon as they walked out of Maegor's tower, guards intercepted them from the dark, and Jaehaerys saw the person coming. Sir Thorne, are you still asleep? Your Highness, you wouldn't take a woman out for a walk at such a late night, would you? Yes, you have 2 children at such a young age. What a guy. What is Sir Thorne's full name, Alice? Or is it Alicia? Jaehaerys couldn't remember it at the moment, but this guy was in his 30s, with a strong build, thick black hair, and a pair of charming eyes. This guy came from the Thorne family in the king's territory, and his armor was decorated with silver flail patterns. Sir Thorne is always good at observing people's words, following others' opinions, and has very good eyesight. It's a good thing that he doesn't practice archery very much, otherwise he would have lost the title of archer. Jaehaerys thought for a while, took out a ruby the size of a pigeon egg from his waist, and quietly stuffed it into his hand. I heard that your son's name day is coming soon. I said before that I would give you a big gift. Please keep it first. Oops, the moon didn't come out today. It turns out I was wrong. Is His Highness the Prince here to retrieve something he left behind? Thorne said without alerting the other guards. Is it a bit heavy? Let me lift it for you. At present, the inside of the Red Fort is tight on the outside and loose on the inside. There are not many people patrolling under the city wall at night, but they are all on the city wall. Along the way, I met the familiar guards in front of me. Except for Old Hart, who was already drunk, the others more or less helped to cover up. Someone brought a large cloak to the little maid to cover the child in her arms. Someone brought 2 horses and asked Jaehaerys to hold the little princess and ride on the same horse. Under the black cloak, he looked like a pot-bellied dwarf, and the maid Olenna rode another horse. With the cover of many guards, several people successfully left the Red Fort. Thank you, brothers. Jaehaerys clasped his fists on his horse. It was really thanks to them today, otherwise just leaving the Red Keep level would have been a big trouble. His eyes glanced at Cyril, the heir of the Stokeworth family, the honest Bronn, Thorn with cunning eyes, the submissive Sir Darren Tunston, and the always gloomy-faced Waishui brothers, from little Sir Jeremy of the Lake family. Keep them in mind. Jaehaerys told himself to remember the faces and families of these people. Even if they were dead or disabled, he would definitely compensate them or their families if he had a chance in the future. A Lannister must pay his debts. I, Jaehaerys, must repay my favors and avenge my enemies. 2 horses and 4 people descended from Aegon's Hill along Hook Alley. At the intersection with Mud Avenue, they met a group of people also wearing hoods, numbering more than 10 people. The leader looked familiar. Jaehaerys looked through the flickering light of the torch and said, "Lord Gorgos." The person who came was one of the 3 wise men from the Alchemist Guild who was skilled in making wildfire. They had met him a few days ago. After Rossart became Prime Minister, his power increased greatly, so the progress of sending the Alchemist Guild's fire to Dragonstone was immediately advanced. With the support of sufficient manpower and material resources, a group of high-level officials were quickly organized. The takeaway team headed by Goss. All of them are elites in the guild, and the least qualified ones are at the assistant level. Those who remain are basically those who are old and frail or unwilling to travel across the ocean. Oh, King. Gorgos did not expect to meet Jaehaerys right here and now. Prior. Yes, sir, I am Priel. Jaehaerys stopped him. Now was not the time to recognize each other. The large hood covered his hair and purple eyes, but did not cover up the sound. Yes, Lord Prill, why don't you come with us? Gorgos also reacted and invited warmly, and the 2 parties joined together. The little maid was already filled with surprise and curiosity, and even the sadness was diluted. I usually heard that the twins of the royal family spent the whole day either eating, drinking, whoring, gambling, cheating, tricking and stealing, dripping oil on the backs of courting crickets, and giving hugs to the right couple. The toad amputated the limbs and chopped off the hands. But now it seems that it is quite different from the rumors. Could it be that the lower limit of the world's requirements for the prince is too high, which leads to such a handsome young man being rumored so badly? Soon, everyone arrived at Lynn Gate. Gorgos had a warrant from the Prime Minister, so no one dared to stop him, which saved Jaehaerys a lot of trouble. There were 2 ships moored on the dock outside the door. One was flying the seahorse flag of the Velaryon family, and the other was a 2-masted merchant ship, which was more than twice the size of the former. Jaehaerys and the young maid broke away from the team and rowed directly towards the Velaryon warship, with an old man standing on the bow. "Comers, stop here. This is the royal family's ship, the Sea Wind. Please go elsewhere." "Your Excellency, are you Sir Tretiman?" Gorgos was paying attention here while directing the alchemists to board the merchant ship. When he heard a familiar voice, he asked, "It's me." Jaehaerys stopped the 2 of them from chatting and said loudly, "Blood and fire come from the same source." Qui Timon knew that he was waiting for the right person, so he replied, "The road is simple." He had just found a merchant ship for his old friend last night, but unexpectedly he was temporarily sent by Lord Lucullus to pick him up. The key is that he didn't know who to pick up. I was only given a password for the connection. After boarding the ship, Jaehaerys took off his cloak, revealing his golden and silver hair and purple eyes, and at the same time grabbed Rhaenys, who was tightly wrapped around him. "I have met His Highness the Prince, His Highness the Princess." Old Tretiman finally understood why Lucullus would arrange such a small matter as picking up people for him. Who can understand the water conditions of Blackwater Bay better than himself? Jaehaerys told him that there was no need for courtesy. Sailing at night was dangerous. With this famous veteran, safety was immediately improved. After all, the old man had spent most of his life drifting on the Blackwater River. He knew where the reefs and whirlpools were with his eyes closed. Jaehaerys watched the sailors put down their oars. The sea breeze was like a centipede, with oars rowing together and moving quickly. Looking at the King's Landing and the towering red castle in the distance, he breathed a sigh of relief. He finally left the fire pit of King's Landing, and his arrangements were basically completed. Only one thing was left. The cold moon was like a tooth, and the waves were sparkling. Except for the sound of oars hitting the water and the sound of wind, it seemed that everything in the world had fallen asleep. Jaehaerys stood at the bow, his eyes fixed on the direction of King's Landing. Outside the West City, martial arts competitions were often held. I guess tonight was also brightly lit and flags were flying, right? At this time, the current was favorable and the wind was against it. After changing a shift of oarsmen, the sea breeze finally arrived at the mouth of the Blackwater River where it could borrow wind. The cool breeze from the sea brought a unique wet smell and salt. "Your Highness, why don't you go to rest?" the little maid Olenna said crisply. "I heard from Sir Tretimon that it will take several hours to reach Dragonstone." He looked at the girl in front of him who was about the same age as a junior high school student in his previous life. Her skin was a little dark, which was normal in Dorne. She walked steadily and walked freely on the turbulent ship. "Olenna, do you know when the darkest time of the day is?" "Is it midnight?" "In fact, dawn is the darkest. At that time, the stars in the sky retreated, the sun was about to rise, and all the light in the world seemed to be wiped out by an invisible hand. Just like now, but in less than a few minutes, after the sun pierces the clouds, the world will suddenly become clear, and light will dominate the world again." Jaehaerys turned and looked at the little maid. At this moment, the first ray of sunlight in the sky was like a sword that cut through the darkness. The shadow of a sun jumped out of the sea level, and the golden light appeared immediately, as if Jaehaerys was plated with a layer of gold, holy and mysterious. The sun was shining brightly, and thousands of mountains and rivers were like fire. In an instant, a sun rose to the sky, driving away the stars and the waning moon. Dragonstone is so small that when Aenar Targaryen took his family and dragons to Dragonstone during the Valyrian Freehold era, he was regarded as a self-exile who had given up the fight for the Dragon King. At the same time, the geographical location of Dragonstone is very critical. It is located at the entrance of Blackwater Bay, which is a tight stranglehold. Every year, the Blackwater River brings a large amount of silt and nutrients, and the warm current brought by the summer sea converges here, forming a huge fishing ground from Cape Marseille in the south to the Five Fingers Peninsula in the north. And Dragonstone is located in the middle. As the fief of the Crown Prince, the people of Dragonstone are free from the exploitation of the great lords and the heavy taxes of the civilians on the mainland, so they live a very stable life. They have settled here for generations since the time of Aenar Targaryen. Originally, most of them were slaves who came with the Targaryen family, but after generations of reproduction, they have long become the most loyal supporters of the Targaryen family. But all this cannot change the geographical reality of Dragonstone, which is high and steep and has scarce arable land. Although there is fertile volcanic ash to nourish the soil, due to the occasional volcanic eruptions, most places are covered with thick volcanic rocks, which are not suitable for agricultural reclamation and planting. The small arable land has limited the population growth of Dragonstone. For hundreds of years, the population of Dragonstone has generally fluctuated around 5,000 people. Excluding the elderly, the weak, the disabled, women and children, there are less than 1,000 young and middle-aged people who can be mobilized for combat. Of course, if you recruit people and capture able-bodied men, you can barely gather an armed team of 2,000 people. At this time, the arrival of the royal fleet brought 3,000 soldiers and 300 cavalry, which not only added garrison strength to Dragonstone, but also suddenly increased the pressure of governance. It's not about food and weapons and equipment, but women. There is an extreme lack of women. The military discipline of this era is not the innocent rabbit army of later generations, but it can only be said to be a little better than the bandits. On the first day after the army arrived on the island, an incident of rape occurred, which caused a confrontation and conflict between fishermen and soldiers, and several people died for this. For this reason, Queen Rhaella had to appoint Lord Adrian Celtigar as the Minister of Justice as soon as she arrived on the island, responsible for maintaining public order on the island. Lucerys Velaryon continued to serve as the Minister of the Sea, suppressing and restraining the navy soldiers of the royal fleet. At the same time, the Dragonstone garrison was established, and Sir William Darry became the first commander of the garrison, responsible for commanding the land garrison forces, guarding Dragonstone and maintaining daily order. A few days later, Master Tria, a maester on Dragonstone, received a raven from King's Landing. "Your Majesty, please accept my condolences." As a prince, Jaehaerys knew the content of the letter at the first time. King's Landing fell, Jaime Lannister killed the king, and Tywin's army entered the city and burned, killed and looted. Maegor's Tower was captured, and most of the guards were killed in the battles in the towers, halls, and basements of Maegor's Tower, and a few were captured. Gregor Clegane raped and killed Princess Elia. Lord Bailey's of the Alchemists Guild was killed by Jaime, and then most of the members of the Alchemists Guild knelt down and surrendered. When Tywin entered the Red Keep, he was ambushed by Prime Minister Rossard with wildfire. The Lannisters lost more than a dozen knights, and Tywin himself was burned. His brother Tyget died after being severely burned. Rossard tried to escape in the chaos, but was killed by Amory Lorch. Then the Duke of the North led his troops into the city, and the two sides formed a confrontation, but no large-scale conflict occurred. Tywin Lannister strongly advocated sending troops to attack Dragonstone, and he was willing to pay hundreds of thousands of gold dragons as military pay. However, the royal fleet was taken to Dragonstone, and civilian fishing boats and merchant ships could not be used for sea battles. The Arbor fleet was still trapped outside Storm's End and did not surrender to Robert, although it was foreseeable that this would happen sooner or later. For a while, Tywin had a lot of anger, but nowhere to vent it. He could only vent his anger on the people who followed the Targaryen family. He first plundered and then killed and burned. This behavior was soon imitated. The mansions of the nobles and wealthy merchants in King's Landing were knocked open by the chaotic soldiers, a large amount of wealth was plundered, and countless buildings were burned. The pockets of those who started the robbery were filled with gold dragons and jewels, and those who came later could only pick up some leftovers. In the end, those who came late had to turn their greedy eyes to the civilians. The turmoil lasted for 3 whole days until Robert ordered the lords not to allow soldiers to plunder, rape women, kill and burn, and killed dozens of chaotic soldiers for this purpose. The turmoil gradually subsided. But the people of King's Landing who experienced this catastrophe were killed and wounded. Some families died, some young men and women were abducted, leaving only the old and weak. Those who dared to resist were killed one by one in front of their relatives. The whole King's Landing was full of crying and wailing, and there were dead people and ruins everywhere. The Silent Sisters could not handle all of them. There were too many dead people, and they could not even give them the last dignity. In the end, they could only collect the bodies and light several large fires outside the city. "We are sorry for the people of King's Landing." After reading the letter, Layla was silent for a long time, and when she looked up again, she was already in tears. "Your Majesty, how can you blame you? Blame Lannister and Baratheon. The White Walkers should have captured them." A maid comforted her. Viserys' eyes were red and he gnashed his teeth, while Rhaenys had already fainted in the arms of the little maid Olenna. The young girl already knew that her mother would never be reunited with her. Jaehaerys was sad. Although he knew that King's Landing would fall, he never thought that his arrangement would not only fail to burn Tywin to death, but also arouse the Lion's tyranny, and finally the retribution would be on the people of King's Landing. Yes, that's right. The last arrangement before he left was to ask Rossett not to burn the city. If Lannister was not here to defend the king, he would set up a wildfire on the road that Tywin had to take to enter the Red Castle, and burn him to death as soon as he appeared. It was obvious that Rossett did so, but his luck was a little worse. Tywin was injured but not dead, and he was angry because he lost a brother and started a killing spree. Viserys, Jaehaerys, Rhaenys, follow me. Queen Rhaella, supported by her maid, walked towards the chapel on Dragonstone Island. There was a high altar inside, enshrining the maiden and the Virgin Mary carved from masts, warriors and blacksmiths, old women with pearl eyes, the father with gilded beards, and the stranger statues carved to resemble animals rather than humans. Over the centuries, they have been painted with layers of paint, gilded, silvered, and inlaid with jewels. The stained glass divides the sunlight into 7 colors, colorful and gorgeous. Your father died at the hands of the Kingslayer Jaime Lannister, and countless people in King's Landing died at the hands of the Lannister army. Queen Rhaella turned to look at her 2 sons and granddaughter, feeling grief-stricken. It was a pity that the prince who should be here today was nowhere to be found. It was obvious that she already knew that the real little Aegon had been sent elsewhere. Now our Targaryen family has been driven to this remote island by the rebels. They regard us as a thorn in their eyes and a thorn in their flesh, and will definitely pursue us relentlessly. Perhaps the pursuers will arrive soon. I, Rhaella Targaryen, in the name of blood and fire, ask you to swear in front of the warriors and strangers that from now on, no matter where you are, as long as you are still alive, you must make the Lannisters and the rebels pay for their actions. To comfort the souls of your father and the innocent people who died tragically in the city. I want you to swear in front of the Heavenly Father and the Virgin Mary that among the descendants of the Targaryen family, regardless of age, gender, whoever can destroy the Lannisters and appease the people will be the true ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. The legitimate king of the Iron Throne. 3 young voices echoed in this small church, blood for blood, eye for eye. Some hatred should not be forgotten and can only be passed down from generation to generation through blood. The hatred of 10 generations can still be avenged. At this moment, Queen Layla gave all legal descendants of Targaryen the same inheritance rights. It was not based on order, but based on ability and hatred, and responded with blood and fire to the enemy. Even though Jaehaerys originally had no interest in the Iron Throne, the atmosphere was set in place and he took the oath as soon as his mind got hot. As a result, he felt that there was a layer of shackles coming down from somewhere, which was the restraint from his own blood and the way of heaven. I shouldn't have changed the plot. Now I'm in trouble. Tiandao recognized his oath. If he violated it, he didn't know what the consequences would be. Family members, who knows? I just want to practice Taoism and become an immortal in peace, but why am I forced to take revenge? That's all. The sins you have done are not big enough to bear on your body. At the same time, Junline was in the city. Robert, I think Lord Tywin, Esser Jaime, and those who committed serious crimes such as Gregor and Esser Amory must be severely punished. They betrayed the oath and honor of knights, killed the king they swore to protect, raped women, and tortured and killed surrendered people. The soldiers, arson and looting, have committed a heinous crime. If they don't kill, the people will not be angry. Eddard Stark stood under the throne room and said to the towering Robert Baratheon, Wolf boy, what crime do I, a Lannister, have in my actions? A Lannister must pay its debts. My brother died tragically, just to vent his anger by killing some surrendered soldiers. Even if my nephew killed the Mad King, it was to save the lives of the people of this city and you. Kevin Lannister glared at him with a linen bandage on his arm. He was killed by a man on the way to attack Maegor's tower. A stone was swept away, so he had to wear the same bandage as his elder brother. Your Majesty Robert, I think the top priority is your coronation ceremony. Other matters can be decided after you become the king, Tywin said in a calm tone as much as he could while suppressing the pain. Red and yellow pus oozed from the bandage on his left hand. That day, he was sitting on a tall horse, surrounded by soldiers, but suddenly green light suddenly appeared on both sides of the road. In desperation, Tigget sacrificed himself to block most of the wildfire, and his left hand was also affected, and the liquid seeped into the cracks in the steel. Thinking about it to this day, he is still covered in cold sweat. He has been on the battlefield for more than 20 years and has never encountered such a crisis. He almost became the companion of the Mad King. As for my plundering, please His Majesty Robert punish Bolton, Amber, Glover, Fisselin, Severn, Horwood, Mandalay, Locke, Dustin and other northern territories. And many princes from the Three Rivers and the Stormlands, because their soldiers also participated in the robbery. Tywin said on one knee. Ha ha, Lord Tywin said something serious. Robert stepped down from the high iron throne, and the attendants around him quickly helped him. He grabbed Tywin's intact right hand and said, Sir, you are the pillar of the country. If the Mad King hadn't been under your care, his kingdom would have been taken away by the Black Fire. How could it be his turn? How can I punish you now that the world is undecided? When I am crowned, I will pardon your son's crime of regicide, and he will still be the Kingsguard. How about that? Ed is a stone-headed man who is full of honor and doesn't know how to adapt. So don't be angry with him. Ed, come here and apologize to Lord Tywin. There is no need to apologize. Lord Eddard is also a sweetheart. Tywin narrowed his eyes and said, But your Majesty, you are young and prosperous. You cannot live without the master of your harem for a day. You need to marry a queen of noble birth as soon as possible. Right now I have a daughter who is young, beautiful, knowledgeable and courteous, and is a perfect match for her. Let me think about it. Robert cursed in his heart. He was indeed an old guy who was good at calculations. However, seeing that the old guy was very sensible and had submitted a letter of surrender and took the initiative to bear the infamy of regicide, he decided not to pursue the case. The kingdom needs balance and stability, and the Western Territory cannot be chaotic. If Lyanna really can't be found, then what's the harm in marrying a little lion as a decoration? There are no suitable candidates in the families of the other great lords. All I can say is that what you don't get is always in turmoil. what you get is white moonlight and becomes a grain of sticky rice on your clothes, and a cinnabar mole becomes a smear of mosquito blood on the wall. Lyanna had long seen through Robert's dislike of the old and his romantic nature. Didn't Eddard know that? Of course he knew it, but he couldn't do anything, couldn't solve anything, he could only watch his sister fall into the fire pit. But they never expected that a battle at Harrenhal would change the trend of the entire kingdom and make the situation slide towards the abyss. Nowadays, all the industries in the Riverland, Stormland and the Royal Territory have withered, the people have been displaced, there is no rooster crow for thousands of miles, and the bones are exposed in the wild. The originally prosperous King's Landing city was now in ruins and ruins. Robert may not be a good king, but he never wants to see his rule in such a mess. From the moment he raised his army, he was determined to seize the Iron Throne. He wanted to bring order to the chaos, and he wanted to prove that he was better than crazy. The king and thunder strengthen, he wants his name to be sung in the mouths of various bards, just like Azor Ahai and Aegon the Conqueror. Now that the Iron Throne is under his butt, he can finally realize his ambition. However, who would have expected that the first sword swung upon entering the city would be directed at one of his own people? There are more than a dozen asphalt and lime heads hanging on iron spears outside the Red Fort gate, including his own vassals. Lord John, how are the preparations for the coronation going? Robert changed the subject. The old lion said something very right. The most urgent task now is his own coronation. The country cannot be without a king for a day. Only when the High Bishop personally smears the 7 kinds of holy oils and officially wears the king's crown, can the throne be legitimate. As for whether it is stable, Robert said that the blood of Rhaegar on the Stormhammer has not dried yet. Who dares to fight me? According to the news from Varys, someone secretly calls himself usurper. Who cares about a group of fleas and rats in the gutter? The Targaryen family was not the king of the 7 kingdoms at the beginning. Reporting to your majesty, the coronation ceremony is already under intense preparation, but after the coronation ceremony you requested, a grand and magnificent tournament will be held. I still don't have the money. Aaron reported truthfully. After 2 years of fighting, whose barns and cellars are not empty? So there is really no money. It doesn't matter. We have seized millions of gold dragons from the Red Keep's treasury. In addition to rewarding meritorious officials, it is enough to hold hundreds of tournaments. Robert waved his hand. He didn't feel bad about selling his father's land. Otherwise, what about the Mad King? The Targaryen family's hundreds of years of savings are here, and they don't even want to move away. Also, arrange for someone to throw these rotten bones into the basement. It's uncomfortable to look at. Robert pointed to the giant dragon skulls around. Things that have been dead for hundreds of years are placed in the hall to scare people. If the dragon bones were not still valuable, he would have thrown them into the moat as rubbish. Chapter 31. My name is Xiaojia, I am 7 years old this year, well, I will be 8 soon. I originally lived in the Red Keep of King's Landing, but moved to Dragonstone because of the rebellion. I don't have an aunt or cousin, but I have a beautiful niece and a sister who is about to be born. Jaehaerys couldn't help but think of the plot he had seen before. In the small garden, a small figure wearing armor with shiny copper pieces hanging on a woolen sweater was practicing stabbing with a wooden sword. Next to him was a majestic man with half-gray and half-white hair, tall and burly, wearing a silver-polished breastplate, lined with a black leather armor, and leather armor with copper nails covering his thighs. A sword belt was tied crosswise from the shoulder to the waist, and a long sword was hung on the sword belt. The counterweight round head was a dark yellow round stone. The leather on the scabbard had already become mottled and fragmented. Your Highness Rhaenys, you did a good job, but when stabbing, the power cannot be dispersed. The man began to instruct. Hoo-hoo. Yes, Sir William, Rhaenys panted, with a maturity and steadiness that was not suitable for a 4-year-old child. After learning that her parents were dead and her brother was missing, Rhaenys seemed to have grown up overnight. She no longer cried for her parents, and every day she pestered Sir William Derry, the former coach of the Red Keep and now the commander of the Dragonstone garrison, to learn swordsmanship and riding. Since moving to Dragonstone, Dorne has also sent people to send her a beautiful little sand warhorse, which is just right for children to ride. Her uncles once sent people to discuss taking her to Dorne, but how could Queen Rhaella agree? Targaryen has the pride of a real dragon. Now at least he can take a break in Dragonstone, and he won't run around like a frightened wild cat. So they had to settle for the next best thing and sent more than a dozen Dornish warriors as the guards of Princess Rhaenys. It was obviously a lack of trust in Dragonstone, but Queen Rhaella did not take it as an offense. Anyway, the defense of Dragonstone was too weak now, and a few more elite soldiers would not be a bad thing. Jaehaerys collected rent twice during this period, but apart from gaining a little spiritual energy, he had no skills. It felt like the "thank you for your patronage" on the bottle cap of a beverage. It was hard to have individual patterns, but it was still, "thank you for your patronage." Prince Jaehaerys, do you want to come down and practice together? The former Red Castle coach raised his eyes and said, the youngest son of the dragon family was the laziest. Now it was his twin brother Viserys. Although he was not as serious as Princess Rhaenys, he would occasionally ask him to practice swordsmanship, but he had never seen Jaehaerys come to ask for advice. Ah, great. What Jaehaerys lacks is actual combat. No matter how skilled a rookie is at swordsmanship, he will be confused once he arrives on the battlefield. There are not many piers in the Red Keep, and there are too many things to do in King's Landing. How can he have time to slowly kill monsters and gain experience? So now the swordsmanship level is very high, but the experience progress bar is still 0. Sir William, I want to practice fighting, can you please teach me? Jaehaerys picked up a wooden sword from the weapon rack and waved it, making a whistling sound of breaking wind. Your Highness, I think we should practice basic skills well. Sir William felt that this child was more ambitious than Viserys. Hey, why is there no child as humble as Prince Rhaegar? You make sense, but what if I am a genius? Geniuses should always be treated with some preferential treatment. Jaehaerys chose his words carefully. Quote. Sir William was speechless. Why are all Targaryen children so confident? The process has been done twice. Do we have to go through it again? Well, it doesn't matter if you drive one sheep or a flock of sheep. Thinking of this, he pulled out a wooden sword. It was a little too light for him to practice with the sword, but teaching was enough. Jaehaerys attacked first. He was short and had a short arm span. Only by fighting close to the enemy could he play his advantage of flexibility. The swordsmanship of the Ape King is not only about the technique, but also about the body and footwork. As we all know, the hind legs of apes are short, unlike the well-developed thigh muscles of humans, so the swordsmanship of the Ape King emphasizes footwork and bodywork, and pays attention to the art of small movements, like a fish swimming in a crack in a small space. In terms of swordsmanship, the footwork and bodywork are coordinated, and the unnecessary transitions are reduced when the technique is switched, that is, the flower is pulled, because the wrist structure of apes is different from that of humans, and they can switch moves faster and more freely. Therefore, in close combat, the swordsmanship of the Ape King is faster in swordsmanship and changes in moves, and is more powerful. Jaehaerys circled around the clumsy Sir William, stabbing him from time to time, or changing his moves inadvertently to catch him off guard. Soon Sir William was overwhelmed and exhausted. But Jong was still old and shrewd. He quickly realized that he had to switch to offense and defense. After using the wooden sword to block a slash with great force, he quickly followed up with a slash upwards, and then held the sword with both hands and slashed Washin from top to bottom. The sword technique was open and closed. Although it seemed that there were many flaws in Jaehaerys' eyes, it was only a moment, not enough for him to counterattack. Moreover, under the inertia of the powerful attack, even if he stabbed a loophole, he would inevitably lose the opportunity to escape. In actual combat, it would be a death in exchange for injury. He wounded me to death. At this time, he finally understood the shortcomings of the Ape Master's swordsmanship. The moment of force was too short and the armor-piercing ability was weak. In this era when knights generally wore 2 layers of armor, or even triple armor, the protection of most of the vital parts of the torso was very adequate. Only a few places such as the gap in the helmet, the throat, and the lower body could produce a one-hit kill effect. Other places would have no effect even if they could withstand a few hits. For soldiers wearing light armor or no armor, the swordsmanship of the Ape Master is definitely a head killer, but it is a bit awkward against heavy armor knights. Knights are heavy cavalry when mounted and heavy infantry when dismounted. Wearing plate armor with a slight arc and surface carburizing process, it is a tank of this era. Yes, surface carburizing process is not high-tech. Experienced armor masters will put the finished parts of the plate armor into a container filled with charcoal and then heat the container. In this way, the armor is harder and has stronger defense. However, if I have my meteor sword in hand, the plate armor can also be pierced. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but wonder, why didn't Rhaegar get an Illyrian steel sword when he fought? Maybe the outcome of the Battle of the Trident would be very different. For this question, Aerys said that I have the most say. It's not that I can't, but I don't want to. If Rhaegar hadn't died in the battle, you kid could enter and exit my treasure house freely. And melted a short sword. You want peach if you can take a piece of gold dragon. Thinking of this, he swung his sword and jumped out of the battle circle. If he couldn't beat him, he couldn't beat him. There was nothing shameful, so he admitted defeat frankly. Sir William finally breathed a sigh of relief. He almost lost face. But he was also an unfair victory. Prince Jaehaerys was still a child after all, and his actual combat experience was almost zero. He actually treated the latter as an adult warrior. Your Highness is indeed a rare martial arts genius, Sir William said sincerely. He thought Rhaegar was already an invincible swordsman in the world, but he didn't expect that his brother, who was less than 8 years old, was so brave. Although he is a little immature now, as long as he is well taught, he will definitely be a fierce general like Dragon Knight Aemon after his body develops. William Darry seemed to see a shining star rising slowly. Next, Sir William focused on instructing the two princes. As for Viserys, forget it. He has neither the talent of Jaehaerys nor the tenacity of Rhaenys. At best, he is a Myrish lace, beautiful but impractical. Viserys, who was ignored by Sir William, was now sleeping soundly on the bed, dreaming of punching Jaehaerys and kicking Rhaenys, so beautiful that his nose was full of snot bubbles. Outside King's Landing, a large-scale tournament was in full swing. Thank you, His Majesty Robert, long live His Majesty Robert, countless people cheered and rejoiced. Thousands of knights gathered here, and there were hundreds of people participating in the tournament. The competitions included jousting, team competitions, and archery competitions. The total prize money was 20,000 gold dragons, including 10,000 gold dragons for the champion of the jousting competition, 6,000 for the team competition, and 4,000 for the archery competition. The generous prize money made everyone eager to move. In addition to the generous prize money, there are rumors that the winner of this competition will serve His Majesty Robert and become the new White Robe Guard, which makes everyone crazy. Some people have compared this tournament with the White Robe War, which was a grand event to select the White Robe Guard through a tournament after the coronation of Jaehaerys I more than 230 years ago, because there were 5 vacancies in the Kingsguard. At this moment, there are actually 5 White Robe Guards still alive. After Robert was coronated, he pardoned Fearless, Barristan and King Killer, Jaime Lannister, and their other 3 sworn brothers have never been seen. Lord Eddard has taken the cavalry to relieve the siege of Storm's End, but according to his message, the White Robe Guards are also missing in the Stormlands. Robert believes that they must have held his fiancée Lyanna hostage, so he ordered the lords of various places to search, but there is no letter yet. Robert originally planned to pardon the knights who participated in the defense of the Red Keep, but Tywin firmly disagreed. The latter believed that they were staunch supporters of the Targaryen family and must be executed. Finally, at the suggestion of Lord Jon Arryn, they were given the choice of execution or wearing black clothes. Most people chose to wear black clothes and were sent to the wall after Robert's coronation. Only a few were pardoned by Robert. In the end, this tournament, which was enjoyed by both the host and the guests, lasted for 3 days. Robert selected 2 people, Boros Bronn and a knight named Wyse Austen, and appointed them as his Kingsguard. As for the other 3 vacancies, he still hoped that the 3 people, White Bull and Dawn Sword, would be able to bring their fiancés back and swear allegiance to him. I, Robert, became king by bravery and making friends. Haven't you seen how many enemies were conquered by my powerful personality charm and finally turned enemies into friends? But those dragon cubs still have to be killed, otherwise there will always be some people with ulterior motives who will secretly collude with Dragonstone. So, after the tournament, Robert quickly ordered Grand Maester Pycelle to send a raven to Storm's End, asking Stannis to select sailors and build warships. After the training is completed, he will immediately send troops to Dragonstone to escort the Targaryen daughter cousin and her cubs back to King's Landing, without leaving anyone out. Women and girls can be kept as hostages. But it would be better if the three princes could fall off the warship halfway. When the Raven flew to Storm's End, Eddard also arrived with his army. Seeing that the overall situation was settled, Lord Merry Tyrell and his lords surrendered to Eddard very neatly and swore allegiance to King Robert. However, Earl Pactus Redwyn, who was drifting on the sea, was asked to send his twins, Horace and Hobber, born to Mina Tyrell, to King's Landing as hostages. The Earl of the Arbor knew that he was asked to do his best for Robert. At present, all the Targaryen royal fleets were brought to Dragonstone, and the defense of Blackwater Bay was empty. As long as they wanted, King's Landing and the Crownland could be attacked anytime and anywhere. Among the three major fleets of the kingdom, the Ironmen were not law-abiding. In addition to the Ironmen's longship fleet, only his Arbor fleet could compete with the Dragonstone fleet. Robert would not let this big wronged man go. Fortunately, he had something to ask of him, so his two children would not have any safety problems. But when he thought of him holding him at will, he got angry and had to get some benefits, otherwise he would lose a lot. So after swearing allegiance in front of Eddard Stark, he sent someone to send his twin sons to King's Landing, and at the same time sent envoys to request a 10-year exemption from tariffs on the Arbor. In negotiations, you have to ask for a lion's mouth. The Arbor is similar in size to Tarth, but it is 10 times richer than the latter. Can it afford the most powerful fleet on the continent? Can they have a full 200 warships? Isn't it because Qingding Island can produce the best quality wine in the entire continent and sell it all over the world? As long as the tariffs are waived, the wealth of the Redwyn family will be further improved in the next 10 years. It will become the richest and most influential lord family in the Reach, even surpassing the Hightower family in Aldtown. I, Old Lay, am also a dreamer. Sir Penrose, please select no less than 3,000 sailors and order the lord families near the rainforest to speed up the felling of trees. We must build a strong enough fleet before the storm comes next autumn. Stannis Baratheon took his brother's letter from Maester Crescent. No, it should be called a handwritten order now. I can't believe it. Now that his brother is the king, this magnificent castle under his feet. Stannis is full of expectations, this is what he deserves. If it weren't for him, his soldiers would have surrendered the city long ago. If it weren't for him, the 30,000 soldiers in the Reach and the 200 powerful Qingding Island fleet would have rushed straight to King's Landing. Reward according to merit, it is only right that I become the Duke of Storm's End. I know that I am not loved by the nobles, I will be a good lord, although I have a tough character and never give up, although I am old-fashioned and serious, but I will still be a good lord, I will give fairness and justice to my subjects. But before that, I have to complete the order of my king brother, and then he will definitely give me Storm's End. And Renly, my poor brother, you should kneel down and beg our king brother to give you Dragonstone. Eddard did not find his sister under Storm's End. He was confused. Now, except for Dorne and Dragonstone, the world was still undecided. Varys's intelligence on Dragonstone said that he had never seen the White Guards, and Dorne was a long way away and had not yet received a reply. Now there were only the Reach and the Dorne borderland in the south, which had not been explored in detail. He had already scattered his 3,000 cavalrymen like sowing grain, hoping to get some news. He did not dare to think of a more terrible situation. Lyanna had wolf blood, and wolves would never compromise. Jaehaerys kept practicing martial arts in the cold wind. Autumn turned into winter. The seasons in this era were very strange. Winter and summer were the main seasons, and spring and autumn were like short transitional seasons. When he first came to Dragonstone, it was still summer, but then it was autumn. In about a month, fine snowflakes had already fallen. Although Dragonstone was in the south, it was obviously not far enough south. Even the warm and humid air currents in the south could not break through the cold front from the north in winter. It would only be forced to move upwards and upwards under the lifting of the cold front, and finally form snowflakes or freezing rain. The maesters of the Citadel released white crows representing the change of seasons to the whole continent. They were distant relatives of crows and black ravens, but they were larger and smarter than them. With spiritual energy and sufficient nutrition, Jaehaerys grew very fast. He grew from 4.5 feet to 5 feet in just half a year, and the terrible year of 283 AC was over. When he realized the flaws in his swordsmanship a few months ago, he calmed down and began to learn systematically from Sir William. At this time, he was able to use an unsharpened blunt iron sword and fight with the latter in a small chain mail. The old knight has lived long enough, but he has never seen such swordsmanship in any knight, cunning, treacherous, unexpected, and anticipating the enemy. Although he thinks that this kind of swordsmanship may lose the honor of a knight in a battle, he should be more tolerant of an 8-year-old boy. Prince Jaehaerys has a talent far beyond Rhaegar in swordsmanship. At the same time, he is strict with himself with more than 10 times the patience and perseverance of ordinary people. He quickly practiced swordsmanship to a level that ordinary people can hardly understand. With all due respect, I can't teach him more before he led his troops away from Dragonstone for the first time. This is what Sir William Derry said in a letter to his brother, the Earl of Derry City. After the news spread, everyone was in an uproar, but more people thought that Sir William was exaggerating the blood of the Dragon King. As his physique and cultivation grow, his strength becomes stronger and stronger. Although Jaehaerys is not tall, his strength is not inferior to that of an adult. After arriving on the island, he has to take out half of his time every day to make spring thunder. He can only make 3 cans a day at most. It's not that he can't make more, and the raw materials can only support this level. Gogos brings a group of assistants. Now his daily work is to provide him with raw materials with great difficulty. From the boiling and purification of fish oil to the purchase and grinding of green amphibole, they have consumed all their energy. The alchemists did not have no objections. Many people began to miss the days in King's Landing, but when they heard that most of the wise men of the Alchemist Guild in King's Landing were hanged, they immediately said that doing this little work was nothing. And after seeing the spring thunder, Gogos was completely convinced. The storage problem that alchemists have not been able to solve for thousands of years was solved by an 8-year-old child. Roset the Wise, you are right indeed. With His Royal Highness Prince Jaehaerys here, our Alchemist Guild will return to its peak sooner or later. So, as long as someone keeps talking nonsense, Golgos will suppress them directly. If you have the ability, you can do it. A bunch of little Karamis are not good at anything, complaining about the first place. But even so, the output still cannot be improved. This is because productivity and manpower cannot keep up. Jaehaerys told Queen Rhaella about sending more people, but Queen Rhaella had no choice. Now Dragonstone is in financial distress. The Targaryen family did not reserve much property on Dragonstone back then. Although there are some weapons and equipment in the armory, they have been in disrepair for many years, and they are barely enough after repairs. The dock is also in tatters, and the accumulation of silt has caused the berth to be unable to stop the 3-masted warships. Now the 3-masted warships can only be moored at high tide. In the short autumn last year, a strong wind broke the masts of several warships, and they are still unable to be repaired. The above are still minor problems, and the soldiers' salaries are the big problem. Because they had been on guard against Robert sending troops to attack Dragonstone, patrol boats were arranged to patrol the throat every day. The soldiers who came to Dragonstone with the Targaryen family did not dare to be dismissed. Some lords and knights around Dragonstone had already returned to their fiefdoms, greatly reducing military expenses. But these 3,000 sailors were not allowed to go back, and Dragonstone had to bear their military pay alone. Nowadays, each ordinary sailor has a monthly salary of 20 silver deer, the lower-level officers are 50 silver deer, and the middle-level officers such as flag officers and oar officers are 100 silver deer. The monthly salary of senior officers such as warship captains and first mates is even higher. The Royal Fleet has 10 large warships, 2 masts, more than 150 oars, and nearly 100 small and medium-sized warships. The monthly military pay alone reaches 1,000 gold dragons. If there are patrols and combat missions, the military expenditure will double. I won't mention the expenses of the infantry and knights, because they are really insignificant compared to the huge fleet expenses. The Arbor was able to survive because of the wine trade of the Arbor. The Iron Fleet was able to maintain its huge size because the crew lived on plundering, and the more they worked, the more they earned, and there was almost no military pay. The Royal Fleet used to be able to survive by relying on taxes from King's Landing and the Crown. But now trapped on this small Dragonstone island, without production and without plundering, life is really hard. The new Dragonstone Finance Minister, Earl of Wonder Harbor, Gunther Sanglas, is a devout Christian, but the gods cannot bless him to immediately change the financial predicament of Dragonstone. The only solution he could come up with was to levy taxes. Tax the fishermen and farmers. It must be said that this was a bad move, at least in the eyes of Jaehaerys. Not to mention that the taxes added could not support a month's military expenditure. Just the loss of popular support brought about by the tax increase was definitely a life-threatening burden that the Targaryen family could not bear at this time. In addition to the legal rights and interests of the Iron Throne and the islands around Dragonstone, what other territories did the Targaryen family have at this time? Once the people's hearts were lost, it would be too late to save them again. So Jaehaerys could not hide his shortcomings and could only stand up to refute. Earl Sanglas spread his hands and said that the finance minister should let Prince Jaehaerys come. Jaehaerys was angry on the spot. I'll come if I want to. I'm a college student from the new century of Blue Star. Even if I didn't graduate from the economics major, who hasn't watched a few episodes of The Rise of Great Powers? These days, there are actually many opportunities to make a fortune. Just relying on a trade scissors gap is enough for a family to earn a lot of gold coins. But would Jaehaerys do this? Of course not, at least not now, because time does not allow. The two continents of the known world trade frequently, and the sea trade has long been monopolized by the 9 free trade cities. It is conservatively estimated that the 3 major guilds of Karth alone have more than 3,000 large merchant ships, and Braavos is even more of a behemoth. This is not about how big its area is, but how strong its economic strength is. Braavos has thousands of warships alone, and countless ocean-going trade ships of all kinds. The world is full of their trading ships with purple sails. Its Iron Bank is world-famous, and its lending business extends to the continent of Westeros. Even the Iron Throne gives priority to borrowing money from the Iron Bank and does not dare not to repay it, because these bankers have the ability to control the economy of the entire kingdom. There is a saying in Braavos, the Iron Bank cannot be defaulted. If people dare to say this, they are naturally confident. According to the historical records of the Targaryen family, during the reign of King Jaehaerys I, Jaehaerys' sister's close friend at that time, Miss Alyssa Farman, stole 3 stolen goods from the dragon's lair on Dragonstone Island. A dragon egg was sold to the Sea King in Braavos. King Jaehaerys sent his hand to negotiate, but the egg did not return, and Braavos cancelled the principal of the royal family's debt at the time. The Iron Throne at that time had many dragons such as Black Death, Balerion, Vhagar, Bronze Fury, Vormiser, Silver Wing, Red Queen, Melias, etc. Even so, he was still defeated by the Sea King of Braavos. As you can imagine, the water in Braavos is so deep. Lord Sangaras, I would like to know how much money is left on Dragonstone now. Jaehaerys couldn't just be the leader in a daze. After receiving the relevant information in detail, he asked, as if he were an adult. Earl Sanglas glanced at Queen Layla, saw her nodding, and said, right now, there are only 10,000 gold dragons and more than 300,000 silver deer left in the Dragonstone Island treasury. Counting steel, charcoal, wool, leather and other materials. In total, the value does not exceed 50,000 gold dragons. Jaehaerys thought for a while. Steel and other materials must not be touched. These are their military reserves. The air on Dragonstone is salty and humid, which consumes a lot of iron weapons. Dragonstone itself does not produce iron or wood. As long as Robert blocks the trade with Dragonstone, the army will have to return in a short while to the Stone Age. The only thing left that can be operated is the 10,000 gold dragons, which is pitiful when you think about it. 10,000 gold dragons are equivalent to 1.55 tons of gold, and Robert's tourney championship prize is 10,000 gold dragons. Looking at it this way, Dragonstone Island is really poor. Okay, there are ways to use it if you have less money. Anyway, you don't need a lot of capital in the early stage. Mother, I need you to authorize me to mobilize the royal fleet and all rights to foreign trade. Jaehaerys said confidently. Queen Layla was already pregnant with Lugia, and her belly was already very big. When winter first entered, her body was very thin, her cheeks were sunken, and she looked gaunt. Jaehaerys looked worried, and if this trend continued, after Daenerys was born, the mother-in-law went away again, so he used spiritual energy to nurse Queen Layla from time to time, and even used the remaining one. A crimson pearl pill melted into the water, allowing Queen Layla to drink it unknowingly. After some operations, her body improved significantly compared to before, her face became visibly rosy, and her body became plump. In addition to the fact that her mental state is still not good, the midwives said they have never seen such a healthy elderly mother. My son, feel free to do it. Layla wore a crown on her head. Since Lannister was not destroyed, there is no king on Dragonstone now. Layla acted as regent in the name of Queen Aerys II. Little Aegon's original surrogate child was also cared for by a wet nurse at this time, and little Aegon was still declared to be the legal heir to the Iron Throne. Everyone thought that little Aegon had been taken to Dragonstone. Although it was night, there were many interested people. It was not unknown for Jaehaerys to take away the two children at night. Secondly, they took advantage of the situation and pretended to be confused, and continued to secretly investigate the matter of Chen Kang, attracting the firepower of Robert and Tywin to Dragonstone Island. With Layla's authorization, Jaehaerys summoned the current commander of the royal fleet, Sir Trítymon, and asked him to divide the royal fleet into 3 groups. One group was led by Trítymon to go to the Stepstone Islands, and the other group was led by himself. Lead the attack to White Harbor, leaving the rest to guard home and patrol between the Throat and Blackwater Bay. At the same time, all external communication channels on the island are blocked to prevent outsiders from knowing the movements of the fleet. The number of ravens in each fleet going north and south is clearly registered, and Master Tria from Dragonstone Island selects assistants to take care of it. Only he and Sir Trítymon knew the goals of the 2 squadrons. They were not allowed to announce them to the captain and crew until they left Dragonstone. Jaehaerys wanted to get a vote first within the scope of maximum confidentiality. As for whether Robert has anyone under his command who understands, it depends on God's will. In the early morning, the 2 squadrons quietly left the dock of Dragonstone Island. Jaehaerys had brought all the spring thunders he had made in the past 6 months to his fleet in advance. Each ship was equipped with several improved Scorpion crossbows. This was a large crossbow, 2 to 3 meters long, not in feet. The conversion is too troublesome, and everyone is tired to read, with a wooden rotating frame below and a support frame at the tail. It looks like a scorpion's tail, so it's called the Scorpion crossbow. The crossbow is equipped with a winding winch. When the string is fully loaded, a 2-meter-long crossbow arrow can be fired to a distance of 300 meters. Moreover, each Scorpion crossbow only requires 2 to 3 people to operate it. The arrows of the Scorpion crossbow are slightly different. With modifications, a wooden halter is added to the front of the crossbow, and chunlei can be inserted into it. Due to the added weight and wind resistance, the range of the modified Scorpion crossbow has been reduced. Jaehaerys has seen the soldiers test shooting, and the accuracy is guaranteed if the fixed target is set within a range of 200 meters. But on the swaying sea, the accuracy can only be said to be very touching. Only when the distance is set to 100 to 150 meters and the target is a large ship, the hit rate will increase. Therefore, Jaehaerys's requirement for all fleets is that they must bring out the most experienced and highest hit rate shooters, and before shooting, they must test shoot with ordinary crossbows. After all, there are less than 200 spring thunders in total, which really cannot be wasted. More than 30 large and small warships made full use of the wind to move forward and finally arrived outside White Harbor 3 days later. I repeat, Fast Mobile Warship Squadron, your mission is to pin down the garrison fleet and lead it out of the river mouth. The Mandalay family does not have many large warships, and I believe you can do this. Vanguard Landing Force, your mission is crucial. Hide in the suburbs west of White Harbor, and when you see the garrison fleet being led away, quickly approach the city gate when it gets dark. Tactical Fraud Fleet, your mission is to fly the flag of the Mandalay family, pretend to chase the returning fleet, and strictly implement the plan formulated a few days ago. Plan, no deviation is allowed, to create an opportunity for the Vanguard landing troops to seize the city gate. If it fails, use the trebuchet to throw spring thunder to provide fire cover. I will make sure that there is not a single person standing on the top of their city. Others, after seizing the city gate, rush forward, act quickly according to your respective goals, and retreat after the battle. Now I declare, the Fishing in Troubled Waters operation has officially begun. The plan is that Jaehaerys repeatedly studies the terrain of White Harbor and the layout of the city's functional areas, and finds experienced generals and soldiers to verify the feasibility of the action. Finally, such a Fishing in Troubled Waters plan was formulated. As for why they had to travel thousands of miles to attack White Harbor, it was mainly because there was a royal mint here. In this world, the right to mint coins is a royal concession. Anyone who dares to mint coins privately must pray to the gods for protection and not be discovered by the tax officials sent to various places by the Iron Throne. The latter will not talk to him about human rights. Once discovered, he will be hanged directly. He will not even be given the opportunity to wear black clothes and be tried by combat. This wave of beheading first and reporting later, the royal concession is indeed. Moreover, coinage these days is not like Blue Star, where there are large-scale mechanical equipment such as rolling mills and stamping machines. Before Aegon's conquest war, the Seven Kingdoms minted coins by themselves, mostly by goldsmiths and silversmiths forging by hand, or by casting molds and melting. This caused difficulties in the circulation of currencies in various kingdoms, and the currency system was not unified. After Aegon conquered the Six Kingdoms and, wise king, Darin II unified Dorne, he abolished the coinage rights of the Seven Kingdoms and organized 3 royal mints, which were managed by the Minister of Finance. One of these 3 mints was established in White Harbor. Compared with the manual forging by gold and silversmiths, the Royal Mint forges coins through molds and animal-powered forging presses, with uniform specifications and consistent quality. At the same time, through legislation, the unshakable status of the Royal Mint is determined, private currency is cracked down, and worn coins are recycled. Therefore, the Royal Mint has always been synonymous with legal currency and good currency, and even some extraterritorial places such as the Stone Steps Islands and the disputed lands are willing to use them. In the Royal Mint, the most important coinage tools are molds and large animal-powered forging presses, and the molds have always been the core and most confidential part of the mint. There is no place to make them if you want to imitate them. Whenever a new king ascends the throne, the Minister of Finance will ask the chief blacksmith of the royal family to start making new molds, engraving the new king's head, and adding anti-counterfeiting marks, while the old king's molds are generally collected in the treasury and destroyed uniformly. But this takes time. After Robert came to power, due to the shortage of talents, the Prime Minister John Arryn also served as the Minister of Finance, but how could the old man have so much energy? Just the rescue of the people of King's Landing, the appeasement of the nobles, the arrangement of the coronation ceremony, and the convening of the tournament were enough to exhaust him. In the south, Dorne was even more excited because of the death of Princess Elia, and troops had been stationed in the Bone Road and Prince's Pass. If they were not handled carefully, the war would ignite again. At this juncture, who would have the time to manage such trivial matters? Moreover, White Harbor was far away at the mouth of the White Knife River in the north. Because it was far away from King's Landing, the political center of the Seven Kingdoms, it was still continuing to manufacture the golden dragons and silver deer of the old King Aerys II. This gave Jaehaerys an opportunity. As the legitimate heir to the Iron Throne, it was not too much to cast the golden dragons of the old King Aerys's time, right? The attack went very smoothly. The Manderley family of White Harbor was caught without any defense. Then, 1,000 fully armed soldiers moved around, hijacked the head of the Royal Mint and a group of craftsmen, packed all the tools and equipment, and even luckily found a batch of gold and silver nuggets. These are the raw materials behind the Royal Mint, all of which are cheap for Jaehaerys. The loss of this trip was very small. Only a small warship had its sails burned when dealing with the White Harbor garrison fleet, and 2 sailors died. The landing troops encountered almost no resistance except for 2 people who sprained their ankles because of the slippery road at night. When the equipment and gold and silver nuggets were moved onto the ship, they saw torches from the Manderley castle in the distance, and a fat man under the torch was jumping and cursing. That was the fattest person Jaehaerys had ever seen in the world. He sighed and said it was a pity for the rouge horse under his crotch. It was a good horse. Old man, what are you doing here? On the southern sea, 2 fleets were facing each other, and one of them was not even a fleet. The ship was tattered, and the sails looked like mosaics from a distance. When you look closer, you can see that the holes were filled with cloth of different colors. It's fashionable. It's 1,000 years beyond the human aesthetics of this era. But Sir Tredemont, an old-school knight, sneered at it. If it weren't for Prince Jaehaerys's order, he would rather lead his troops to attack White Harbor instead of dealing with these fleas and rats in the gutter. But he couldn't stand the soft and hard nagging of His Highness Jaehaerys, and couldn't stand Prince Jaehaerys's high hat, saying that the old general was the pillar of the country, who else could take on such an important task. The old man didn't like to joke around, but he liked to brag about his achievements. He hoped that his efforts would be recognized by the superiors. If he could earn a fiefdom, it would be even better. It's a pity that his family is still in the king's territory. Alas, I hope they won't be implicated. The one on the other side is half a face. If you are not blind, you should see that I am here under the banner of peace. Thanks to you, my eyes are still fine. The pirate leader from Bloodstone Island replied, then what does the female dragon want to do? Is she trying to recruit us as her husband? Ha 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 ha, a burst of laughter came from the opposite ship. Shut your stinky mouth. Dare to insult His Majesty. If I don't have a mission, I will kill you first. The old general was angry, but still did not lose his power. I am ordered by the Queen of King Aerys II, the King of the Andals, the Roiner and the First Men, the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, to do a business with you worth millions of gold dragons. Really? Impossible, they have so much money. It must be fake. The treasury of the Iron Throne has been occupied by the usurper. What if it's true? Sir Tredemont was very satisfied with their reaction. His Highness Jaehaerys was right. We should take the initiative. Although we don't have millions of gold dragons, it doesn't prevent us from drawing a pie first, and then slowly CPU them later. Drawing a pie is easy to understand, but what does CPU mean? Although Sir Tredemont didn't quite understand, he knew it was definitely not a good word when he saw the smirk on Prince Jaehaerys's face. Sir, why should we believe you? Half-Face was surprised and happy. He didn't dare to believe it in his heart, but who dared to guarantee that it must be fake? Just based on the Targaryen family's rule of the Seven Kingdoms for 300 years, just based on the name of the Targaryen family, a few million gold dragons are not a small matter. Could it be that you found a large number of dragon eggs in the Dragon Mountain? Half-Face tried. In addition to dragon eggs, he really didn't know what other treasures could be worth millions of gold dragons. Haha, I just want to ask you, do you have a lot of gold, sand and silver? So what? What does it have to do with you? Is it difficult to handle? Now Dragonstone is willing to buy your spoils or stolen goods at a high price. Tredemont said calmly. He was not worried that the other party would refuse. The Stepstones are located between the Summer Sea and the Essos continent. There are countless smugglers, pirates, and criminals gathered in hundreds of islands of different sizes. The big pirates have no subordinates, and their backgrounds are quite complicated. Those with connections will sell the stolen goods to free cities such as Milvlantis or Dornay. But most of the small pirates, such as Half-Face, do not have this channel. They can only endure the exploitation of the big pirates. 1 pound of gold can only be exchanged for 1 gold dragon or the currency of the free trade city of equal value most of the time, while 1 pound of pure gold can make at least 2.9 gold dragons. Do these small pirates have resentment in their hearts? Of course there is, but there is no way, because the free trade cities of Westeros and Essos do not accept currencies issued by other countries or regions, not to mention gold products and gold that has not been melted. And this is called seigniorage. Under normal circumstances, it is basically impossible for them to mint coins with the gold and silver bars they looted. They don't have the technology or the channels, and the unusable gold and silver bars are no different from bricks. But what they need to share with their pirates is the real gold dragons and silver deer. Of course, these small leaders also have to go through a process. The demand is huge, but the supply side gap is huge. Through supply side reform, there is arbitrage space. Jaehaerys's idea is very simple. Since they have the need to exchange gold dragons, and I happen to be able to exchange them for them, why not kick out the middlemen and make the difference myself? We can use gold dragons to buy the gold and silver in your hands. What do you think? How is the price calculated? 1.2 gold dragons for 1 pound of gold bars. What I want is pure gold. Those with insufficient purity must be converted. Half-Face and his men whispered for a while. This deal can be done. In the past, at most, 1 pound of pure gold was exchanged for 1 gold dragon, which was basically the market price. Dragonstone Island took the initiative to raise the price by 20%, which is considered to be a violation of the industry rules, but what does this have to do with us? Wouldn't it be nice if we took this 20% for free? But how can we do business without bargaining? Too little, at least 1.5. Half-Face, you should say you have no face, the price we gave is already very high. Don't forget that there are many people in the Stone Archipelago who want to do this deal with us besides you. Also, if you agree, you can become our exclusive strategic partner in the waters of the Stone Archipelago now. Why can't you buy gold from others? Sir Tretimon smiled like a fox. Yes, boss, we can find other people to buy it. We don't have to give them 1.2 gold dragons. Give them 1.1 or even 1.05 gold dragons, and they will come running over. The subordinates were anxious. This business was hard to come by. If Half-Face dared not agree, his subordinates would throw him into the sea to feed the fish. Even though Banbianmian was the leader, he did not dare to offend the public, so he agreed immediately. This was Qui Diamond's suggestion. Since both parties were trading for the first time and had not established enough trust, they would trade 10,000 gold dragons first. Later, when the cooperative relationship was close, the scale of the transaction would be expanded. The pirates felt very considerate instantly. They did not expect that the sea stranger, Sir Qui Diamond, would be so considerate. They really misunderstood him before. They immediately sent people back to their nest and moved out the gold accumulated for many years. It was all pure gold with impeccable quality. Both parties were very satisfied. Qui Diamond successfully obtained more than 8,300 pounds of gold, and the pirates finally had money to pay the capture fee. And this is just the beginning. As long as they can continue to acquire gold from other pirates, this business will become more and more profitable. And Dragonstone Island made more money. The more than 8,000 pounds of gold alone were enough to make 24,000 gold dragons. Excluding the fleet mission expenses and fire consumption, it made a profit of 130% with tiers. In fact, it looks simple, but it is not difficult to operate. Thanks to the gold standard and the coinage right in this world, the Iron Throne has taken over. Otherwise, anyone can cast the gold in their hands into gold coins at any time. In that case, Jaehaerys would have no arbitrage space, but how to say it, the person who formulated this policy was the Iron Throne. The ancestors certainly did not expect that one day the descendants would be driven out of King's Landing. While they tried their best to protect their own interests, they accidentally solved a big trouble for Jaehaerys. The current Iron Throne will certainly not sit idly by. For the huge amount of coinage tax, they will definitely find ways to stop it, and the method is also very simple. Speed up the casting of Robert I's gold coins, gradually replace the old king's gold coins, and then prohibit the circulation of the old coins through laws. As mentioned before, this takes time. The old King Aerys II has been in power for more than 20 years, and the gold coins he has cast are tens of millions. It is impossible to recast them all in a short time. In fact, there is another way, that is to control the raw materials of the gold mines in the west so that none of them will flow overseas, and then rush to buy the gold from the pirates with Dragonstone. But unfortunately, they have no ships. If they had ships, wouldn't it be more effective to destroy Dragonstone once and for all? So, Jaehaerys's move was a clear plan. Robert and his ministers in the Royal Council knew about it, but there was nothing they could do. They had to follow his ideas. After Sir Tretimon and the pirates agreed on the time and place of the next transaction, they returned to Dragonstone with satisfaction. When the two squadrons returned to Dragonstone one after another, Jaehaerys suddenly realized that with the gold looted from White Harbor, they were able to melt 50,000 gold dragons, far exceeding expectations. There were 10,000 pounds of gold in White Harbor alone. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually a lot. Of course, gold has a high density, and the volume of 1 ton of gold is about the size of a desktop computer host. A larger suitcase at home can hold 2 tons of gold. And 18,000 pounds is a little over 8 tons, equivalent to 4 large suitcases. The costume drama is really unbelievable. 2 strong men can easily lift a large box of gold. It's outrageous. It's like Shangyu per capita. This efficiency is still too slow. Jaehaerys instructed that the construction progress of the Royal Mint on Dragonstone must be accelerated, especially in view of the shortage of construction workers. He ordered the recruitment of fishermen and farmers, and offered the workers a high price of 1 silver deer per day, daily payment. As a result, more than 1,000 strong men were recruited within 1 day. Of course, building a factory does not rely on a large number of people. Under the selection of the coinsmiths in White Harbor, a part of qualified personnel was quickly selected. Others did not disband on the spot. They were willing to come. In addition to money, they still believed in the Targaryen family. We can't let this group of people lose heart. So under Jaehaerys's explanation, others dug pits on the rocky beach south of Dragonstone. Of course, the wages were definitely not that high, but it was definitely a conscience price. He wanted to build an unprecedented murex breeding base here. When he was in King's Landing, he used the only yellow Taoist fruit so far to eat a murex breeding and parotid gland fluid extraction technology. When he heard that Bravo's merchants loved to extract a natural purple dye from a sea snail, he immediately remembered it. This sea snail should be a murex, but in the Valyrian language of Bravos, animals with shells and soft feet are called snails. He had been trying out with fishermen for the past 6 months, and finally found several suitable types of murex. One is the spiny murex, one is called the mermaid comb, and the other is called the storm hammer. These types of murex are the most valuable for breeding. They are not picky about food, they grow fast when they eat more, they are big, and they produce a lot of parotid fluid. And the meat is delicious. 10 days later, the mint was successfully completed, and 20 days later, a murex breeding pond covering more than 10 acres was successfully introduced with seawater. These 10 acres were divided into 3 areas, and 3 types of murex were bred at the same time. The main reason was that these murex were all carnivorous. When food was scarce, they would fight each other. Jaehaerys didn't want to see this. He could only try to physically separate them. The breeding pond was slightly below sea level, and there were iron nets and iron fences at the entrance to the sea to prevent natural enemies from coming in for a buffet, and to prevent the naughty mothers from running for freedom during the high tide. The mothers of murex were easy to get. Fishermen who went out to sea to fish could get a large number of them every day. In the past, people didn't pay much attention to them. After catching them, they just threw them back into the sea. Now Jaehaerys offered a price of 1 copper coin each, and these originally garbage fish immediately became fragrant. In a few days, he received more than 10,000 conchs and put them into the breeding pond that fully simulated the underwater world. He looked forward to harvesting a large amount of conch dye next year. This dye was called scarlet purple by the Bravos people. Try not to confuse it with the name on Blue Star, although it is the same thing. A pound of fabric dyed with scarlet purple is worth the same as gold, and Jaehaerys is certainly not stupid enough to sell dyes. He only needs to buy undyed silk and wool fabrics from the north or the free trade city-states, and lightly dye them in the dye. Deep processing creates more value and can also make more profits for him. Of course, this is not as fast as coin casting, but it is sustainable development. If it is done well, it will be the hen that lays golden eggs on Dragonstone. Your Highness, with the craftsmen working day and night, 50,000 gold dragons have been successfully cast. Look, the original person in charge of the White Harbor Mint was sent by Aerys too. His name was Robert Grafson, and he was the cousin of Earl Grafson of Seagull Town. Later, Robert captured Gulltown, and the staunch royalist Earl Grafson was killed. After Robert was crowned, the Earl's descendants were deprived of the right of inheritance. When Robert heard that the patriarch was killed, he was always worried, fearing that he would be implicated. When he saw the Targaryen army coming, it was like seeing his relatives, and he shed excited tears. He took the initiative to lead the army to start the sweep. Under his leadership, the equipment, raw materials, and craftsmen were basically packed up and taken away. If it weren't for him, Jaehaerys's coinage plan would be delayed at least, for more than 10 days. Jaehaerys would certainly not treat his meritorious officials unfairly, and immediately asked Queen Layla to make him an earl. The fiefdom was in the Grafson territory of Gulltown. Of course, Gulltown was still in the enemy-controlled area, but it didn't matter, the title was occupied first. Robert brought a few newly minted gold dragons and presented treasures to Jaehaerys. Jaehaerys picked up one of them and looked at it carefully. A gold dragon has a diameter of 2 inches (5.08 centimeters) and a thickness of 0.55 centimeters, which is slightly larger than a certain brand of gold coin chocolate on Blue Star. It feels heavy in the hand. Gold dragons are 5 troy ounces and weigh 155.52 grams. This size is neither too big nor too small. The surface of the gold coin has clear lines and sharp edges. There is no wear at a glance. Jaehaerys thought about it and asked Robert to put the newly minted gold coin in the sand bucket and roll it, so that there will be natural wear between the sand and the gold coin, and between the gold coins. It doesn't look like it was newly minted. It's not that he wants to be short of weight, but in fact it's just to make it look old. The news that Dragonstone can cast gold dragons will be known as soon as possible, especially his trading opponents. Those pirates are not good people, and they have ships. 50,000 gold dragons are still too slow. Jaehaerys sighed. The current situation is that the mint is waiting for the rice to cook. Without the gold of the pirates, there is no way to cast more gold dragons, and without more gold dragons, there is no way to purchase more gold. The snowball can only produce a jaw-dropping scale when it rolls to a certain extent. Jaehaerys has no time to wait for the scale to grow slowly. After all, once Robert reacts, the efficiency of the entire kingdom's actions is not comparable to his mint. Your Majesty, there are still many gold dragons on Tidehead Island and Crab Island. Robert is now the #1 leg pendant of the Targaryen family. He knows that as long as Dragonstone can hold on, he will be safer. So he actively made suggestions, which really woke up the dreamer. Hey, you are a genius. Jaehaerys suddenly realized that he was also trapped in a misconception of thinking. In the previous life, people who didn't even buy a house spent money within their means and had no concept of debt. However, for the nobles in this world, debt was as common as buying a house with a mortgage in the previous life. Many lords, families didn't have surplus food, which gave rise to many loan families and loan sharks. In fact, these two types of people were often the same type of people. The richest forces in the Seven Kingdoms, such as Lannister, Tyrell, and the Church, were also the largest loan sharks. 9 out and 13 back was commonplace. If the loan was for 1 year, the interest after 1 year would have reached 5 times the principal. Of course, the interest for temporary loans between most lords was not that high. Generally speaking, the monthly interest was 1/10 of the principal. Invite Lord Velaryon and Lord Celtigar for me immediately. Jaehaerys ordered his servants. He wanted to borrow. Bah, give them a chance to make a fortune. The 3 islands of Dragonstone were very close to each other, with Crab Island being a little further away. As for Tidehead Island, the ship had already arrived before the sails were inflated. Soon, the 2 earls arrived at the Stone Drum Tower, which is the main fortress of Dragonstone. Whenever a storm comes, the ancient walls will rumble and echo, as if a giant struck a stone drum, hence the name. Jaehaerys came straight to the point and said he wanted to borrow money. How much? At least 500,000 gold dragons. But the interest cannot be too high. The 2 were not good at fighting, but they were good at doing business. For such a large loan, even if the interest rate was reduced a little, it was tolerable. The 3 had a friendly discussion on the interest issue, and finally decided on a term of 1 month and an interest rate of 5% of the principal. Everyone was happy. Merchants are most efficient when it is profitable. That night, the 2 each came to Dragonstone with 250,000 gold dragons. Tell our pirate friends to prepare more gold. This time our trading scale has increased. Jaehaerys told Sir Tretimon after the 2 left. Your Highness, this behavior is too risky. Pirates are a group of people who don't keep their promises. It's hard to guarantee that they won't. Qui Diamond said worriedly. Don't worry, sir, I will go out in person this time and bring all the Spring Thunders. If they know what's good for them, it will be good for you, me and everyone else. If they really have any thoughts that they shouldn't have, I will let them taste the taste of being plundered. Jaehaerys is not a little white rabbit, he is a young dragon, and he is quickly adapting to flying. These days, with the blessing of sufficient raw materials, he spent more than half a year, and finally with the help of Xiao Xiao, of Duobao Shanjin, he successfully improved the magic circle recently. Through the self-operation of the magic circle version 2.0, he finally realized the mass production of Spring Thunder. Now as long as the raw materials are sufficient, more than 100 cans can be produced a day. The efficiency has increased by 30 times. At present, more than 1,000 cans of Spring Thunder alone have been stored. Indeed, when half-face of the Stone Step Islands learned that trading had started again, most people fell into a carnival, but a small number of people also had the idea of taking advantage of others. They had known for a long time that the current Royal Targaryen fleet only had 100 warships and more than 3,000 soldiers, and it was impossible for Dragonstone to send all the ships out for trading. But when the pirates from the entire stepped stone islands gather together, the number of battleships alone can reach 1,000. The number of pirates with rich combat experience is no less than 50,000, and the remaining pirates who play gongs and drums are 3 to 5 times that number. Idiot, I asked you to keep it a secret. Did you keep it secret? Only half of the face was intact, covered with frost. Brother, I told my wife. A tall, slender, short-haired pirate raised his hand cautiously. His teeth were very black, and he was missing a front tooth. A black dragon crystal was embedded in his left eye. You idiot, if your cousin Reese knows about it, it means everyone knows about it. The short, fat first mate with thin hair couldn't help but curse. Hey, short winter melon, it's good that we have a good relationship, but if you say that, I will still sue you for defamation. The thin man was not happy. What's wrong? Seeing that I have married a beautiful and daughter-in-law, you are jealous. Yes, my daughter-in-law originally came from an indescribable place like Reese, but she has long since become a good person, right? Last time I was sick, she took care of me tenderly and drank medicine. Come on, DeLange, drink the medicine quickly. The lingering voice still lingers in his mind. Just like when they swore to the moon on the sea together, if you never leave me, we will depend on each other for life and death. Many rumors are because they are jealous of themselves. So he kept pouring dirty water on his wife. The hell did your forehead get squeezed by the wine barrel? Half of his face was filled with anger. There are already more than a dozen bosses here today, coming here to get a share of the pie. The hell are you saying you didn't leak it? That's not necessarily my wife. The tall thin man muttered. Really, if Dad hadn't asked me to take good care of you before he died, I would have drowned you first. Half of his face was full of hatred, but the two of them were still brothers. No wonder the tall and slender man dared to talk back to the first mate. It turns out that those who are favored are confident. Dwarf Winter Melon is humble online. Brother, please calm down. First of all, it was definitely not my wife who did it. Secondly, if you all know it, you will know it. The worst is that this time we will do it for him, and then we will run away after doing it. I was really angry, so I quickly relented. You, half of his face cursed, are you really short-sighted? Just focus on the petty profit in front of you. Brother, what do you say? The tall and thin man and a group of pirates who had the same idea asked quickly. The Targaryen family has indeed been expelled from King's Landing, but is this a serious royal family? Okay. Of course, they will not be so stupid as to give up their legal rights to the throne. Yes, no matter how bad the Targaryen family is, as long as they still have a claim to the Iron Throne, they will have enough channels to continuously obtain golden dragons legally. Do you know how rich the Lord of Tide and Red Crab are? Have no idea. What a bunch of losers. The Velaryon family, the Lord of the Tide, was as rich as the Lannister family 100 years ago. And the Red Crab Celtigar family is not inferior to the Velaryon family at all. They have accumulated countless a century of wealth. Think about it, if we just get a taste of the sweetness and cut off the tentacles they extend, what can we gain? Get the golden dragon, said the tall and thin man. Shut up, half of the face said viciously, and the half of the face that was smashed turned red. If we attack now, the most we can get is hundreds of thousands of golden dragons. That's not bad, the tall and thin man thought to himself. Many people actually thought the same as him, but they were too intimidated by the power to dare to speak. The golden dragons in their hands must be fixed, just like the waves have peaks and valleys. When they make bold moves and exchange more and more, it means they still have a lot of golden dragons in their hands. At this time, we cannot act rashly. Avoid alerting the enemy. But when they start picking at so-so, it means there are not many golden dragons on hand. By then, at that time, we will not only rob their ships, but we can also use the trust generated by multiple transactions to contain them with a small number of ships, and a large force will attack Dragonstone Island and Tidal Head Island to snatch back all the gold that was previously traded. Brother, this move is really damaging. The tall and thin man boasted. Damage is a compliment to this group of pirates. In this chaotic sea area with no order at all, ruthlessness means standing firm. The poison is durable. Those kind-hearted guys have long been devoured to the bone. Brother, you will marry that female dragon when the time comes. Hee, you can also become a king. The first mate coaxed, his bald head glowing red with excitement. The subordinates were even more excited and started to boo. Half of the face showed greed in the eyes, and the expression was intoxicated. It had obviously reached the level of intracranial ejaculation. It looks like Dragonstone and 3 islands are all within the reach of applause. Okay, now that the mother dragon has sent the news of another transaction, we can't expose our ambitions yet. Half-Face stretched out his hand to suppress it, and the thieves slowly calmed down. How is the gold I asked you to collect secretly? Boss, we recently visited dozens of families including One Ear, Big Nose, Red Beard, etc., and collected a total of 200,000 pounds of gold. According to your instructions, 1.05 gold dragons per pound, plus our own 20,000 pounds, a total of 220,000 pounds. After this ticket, we can earn, how much can we earn? The first mate looked at a thin pirate not far away. It can make a net profit of 40,000 gold dragons. The little man looked at Half-Face and whispered. Running around hard, just to earn money for running errands. Half-Face spat, but he didn't think about what he paid. If he only relied on his own 20,000 pounds of gold, he could only earn 4,000 gold dragons. Now the risk-free income has reached 36,000 gold dragons, and he still thinks it is not enough. Forget it, it's a little, so let's contact more pirates later and make a big deal next time. Okay, big brother, write back to our mother dragon and tell her that we want to trade 300,000 pounds of gold this time, and ask her to prepare the gold dragons. Said Half-Face. Anyway, the gold will be returned to him later, and he doesn't think the initial investment is too large. The money to buy the gold from other pirates was obtained by their gang by using their family's assets and mortgaging the ship. If the other party doesn't bring enough gold dragons, he will be furious. Are you going to get mad again? Jaharis put his wooden sword against Visory's throat. Tell me, do you still want to go out and fool around? No, never again. Visory's was discouraged. He couldn't beat him. He couldn't beat him at all. This brother has been like a balloon in the past 6 months. He is half a head taller than him. And he has basically not practiced swordsmanship properly in the past 6 months. He eats and sleeps all day long. He can't beat him in the first place, and now he can't beat him at all. Why did Jaharis beat Visory's? The latter actually went to the seafood market in the village outside the castle with the guards last night. The seafood market is not rare. There is a market where there is demand. With so many soldiers and their families not on the island, it is normal to have needs. If they don't vent for a long time, there will be big problems. Jaharis is not the unkind Stannis Baratheon. He believes in letting nature take its course. However, the seafood market should be disinfected regularly, and seafood merchants should also have regular health checks to prevent infectious diseases. Therefore, seafood markets of all sizes sprang up in just half a year, driving the rapid development of Dragonstone. Look, the regular murex farming has not yet produced benefits, but a huge tax was collected from the seafood market. What he called a huge sum of money must be tens of thousands of gold dragons. Some people may ask, isn't the monthly military salary only 1,000 gold dragons? After 6 months, it is only 6,000. How come the aquatic product tax alone is over 10,000? My dears, this account can't be calculated like this. For example, everyone knows that when a physical store is opened, the salary paid to the workers generally does not exceed 20% of the total expenditure. The larger the store, the lower the proportion of labor costs. Instead, operations, advertising, and store rent account for the majority. This is easy to understand, right? Similarly, Dragonstone is now like a super large company. The biggest expenditure is not military pay, but the maintenance and upkeep of the fleet. From oiling, repainting, removing hull attachments, and repairing, tens of thousands of gold dragons are spent every month. Otherwise, with the foundation of Dragonstone, it can only support half a year. This is why when Erlu hired Salador San's fleet later, he had to pay him more than 20,000 gold dragons every month. The latter's fleet only has more than 30 large and medium-sized ships. Note that they are not all warships. Of course, it is impossible not to pay a premium for hiring, but it also shows how expensive naval maintenance is. If the timing is not right now, Jaehaerys would have let the warships transfer to merchant ships. Pure combat fleets can't afford it, really can't afford it. More than half of the warships of the Dragonstone Royal Fleet are old ships that have been built for decades. The maintenance costs invested in these years are enough to build the same number of new ships. According to the depreciation rate, the residual value of these ships is approximately equal to zero, and they could have been classified as scrapped long ago, but now they are still working hard on the front line, and their professionalism touched Jaehaerys. So he was very moved and asked someone to redesign the ship. This time, he wanted a ship that could fight and run, with invincible firepower in wartime, and a cargo capacity that was not inferior to merchant ships in peacetime, and could run very fast when fully loaded with cargo. The old craftsman in the Admiralty shouted, "You are thinking about Peach." Yes, since the traditional important ministers of the Imperial Council are now only the Minister of Finance, the Minister of the Navy, and the Minister of Justice. They can't even get together a mahjong table. How can this be tolerated? So Jaehaerys directly suggested drastic reforms, establishing the Admiralty, the Army, the Justice, the Finance, the Foreign Affairs, the Interior, the Fisheries and other departments. The most important of these are definitely the Finance and the Admiralty. For Earl Lucerys Velaryon and Earl Adrian Celtigar, the title is just changed from minister to minister, and the jurisdiction remains unchanged, so it doesn't matter whether they oppose it or not. But in fact, it's not the case. Of course, this is a bit far-fetched. Now Jaehaerys is educating the naughty child on his mother's orders. If someone hadn't reported it quickly, Viserys might have tasted the taste of the sea himself. As for who this person is, of course it is the Internal Guard. The official name of the Internal Guard is the Internal Affairs Department's Security Guard. On the surface, it is the same as the Royal Guards of Dragonstone, but in fact it is an intelligence department. Since the funds have been in place recently, it will soon officially begin to perform its duties. Queen Rhaella asked them to obey Prince Jaehaerys completely. It's not that she is too partial to the latter, but other members of the royal family are not up to the task. Viserys is lazy and has no scheming, while Rhaenys is tenacious, but she is too young. A 5-year-old child is hard to convince. Jaehaerys was different. He created Spring Thunder at the age of 7, and single-handedly led Rhaenys out of King's Landing. Later, even Ser Derry admitted that he was already a master swordsman, and he shined in the subsequent financial crisis. Even Rhaegar at the same age could not have achieved such an achievement. This made Queen Rhaella look forward to him even more. The forest witch who came to the court with Jane from Stone City told King Jaehaerys II that the prince in the prophecy would be born from the offspring of Rhaegar and Aerys. So Jaehaerys too knew that their brother and sister relationship was dull, but he still arranged for them to get married. At first, she thought the prince in the prophecy would be Rhaegar, but Rhaegar died in the battle. Now she saw Jaehaerys's performance and was more and more sure that the prince in the prophecy was the latter. Otherwise, there is no way to explain why Jaehaerys suddenly changed from a loser to a wise prince who is proficient in state affairs, military and martial arts. He is not the loser in the novel. After using the wooden sword to teach the naughty kid a lesson, Jaehaerys felt that his spiritual realm had improved a little bit. No wonder everyone in the world likes to be a teacher, and it is true. It feels so good to stand on the moral high ground and criticize others. Okay, when I come back, I will teach you swordplay myself, otherwise how can you be my brother? Ah, how can you have such a horrible idea? Huh. I mean, how can you have such a friendly idea? I really love you. Viserys wanted to cry but had no tears. Gods bless the White Walkers to catch this demon. I promise that I will never play in the Blue Moon Seafood Market again, is that not okay? Oh, by the way, the Blue Moon you went to yesterday was raided by my people. Many seafood merchants there haven't had a physical examination for 2 months. I'm afraid they will spread diseases. Well, that's it. If you have any symptoms such as itching or odor, remember to see the Grand Maester. Jaehaerys said lightly. Ah, it would have been better if he didn't say it. As soon as Viserys said it, he felt itchy all over his body, especially there. Seeing Jaehaerys go out, he hurried to the Maester's tower under the crow's nest. If it was really that disease, he couldn't delay it. Master Tria, help, your highness, Half-Face sent a message that he collected a lot of gold this time and asked if we can eat it. An internal guard who was responsible for collecting intelligence on foreign trade asked. How much? The letter said 300,000 pounds, but according to our intelligence, the actual amount will not exceed 250,000 pounds. Hiss, this guy is quite capable. By the way, how did you find out? Your Highness, this is what you taught us. You said the best way is pillow talk. So we found someone who is powerful enough. A talent. Go back to the Ministry of Finance and ask for an extra month's salary. At the same time, the future salary and attendance allowance of the entire Ministry of Internal Affairs' guards will be given by me. Thank you, Your Highness. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.